I'm going to call to order regular council meeting number 1543 for July 27th. And in honor of the Liwatul, the village of Pemberton acknowledges that we are meeting within the unceded territory of the Liwa Nation. For those members of the public in attendance, please note that this meeting is a live webinar and is being recorded. The recording of the meeting will be available on the website following the meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Oh, Councillor Craddock, welcome. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Motion to approve.
Second by Councillor Antonelli. Any discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Rise with a report. Council is rising with a report on the following resolutions that were passed at the in-camera meeting number 1542 held on Tuesday, July 13th. Regarding the Bike Skills Park, it was moved and seconded that council awards the contract to Velo Solutions in the amount of $614,425 for the Pemberton and area mountain bike skills project. And with regards to BC Transit operating agreement, it was moved and seconded that the mayor and CEO be authorized to sign the 2021-2022 annual operating agreement once the SLRD and Liwa Nation have provided their support. Adoption of minutes from regular council meeting number 1542 from July 13th, moved by Councillor Noble, second by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising? No business arising from the committee of the whole, committee meetings, delegation. So we're going to go right into number 9, pardon me, 9A, Office of the CAO. We'll start with a verbal report. Gilmore.
Good morning. I'm going to start, instead of the reports I do have a verbal update I just wanted to share regarding the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee meeting that we had. It was last week, a week ago Monday. Another really good meeting. We've actually rotated the chair position. So typically it's been the Dyking District who's taken that role. And the CAO actually of the SLRD chaired the last meeting, and the village will take the next meeting. So we received some updates on where we were at with projects. So the Arn Canal Outlet Project, you probably will have seen some messaging about that. The Dyking District is looking to start on the 26th, which was just last Monday. They obviously have a finite window to get through just because they'll be working in a stream. So they have the fisheries window that they need to contend with as well. The Miller and Green River river gauges will be installed. Were installed last week. So what they will be doing is once they get all of the setup, all of the jurisdictions involved in the PVEMC will receive all the login information and data and can check real-time elevations and situations in the creeks. So North Arm Channel Outlet, they didn't have too much update on that, doing some work. Sediment removal monitoring and survey. So we saw a presentation from Mr. Clark a few months ago and talked about where you can see, especially up the valley a little bit more, where some of that sediment is really taking up a lot of the river. And what they wanted, this is the Lillooet River. So what they wanted to do is make sure that we're getting some surveys to be able to monitor that sort of on an ongoing basis. So they're carrying on with that. We debriefed a little bit on the high water event that we had. There have been some areas that have been identified that need some upgrades and work. They're sort of cross-jurisdictional. They also involve Ministry of Transportation. So we're going to reach out to them and see how together we can again do some of these upgrades to avoid any future potential high water or flooding events. There was also some information shared about some sediment pictures actually by way of helicopter when there was some investigation up there during the high water event. And they just talked about where the sediment that we're aware of, but they went higher up in the mountain, and there's actually a significant larger amount of sediment that we never actually factored in that's higher up in the mountain. I'm going to try and get some of that information, and maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion on that later, but it wasn't even what we were looking at for future infill of sediment and removal down throughout the valley, which could put us in a worse situation. there were some discussions with the Richmond Diking Authority. Obviously, they have a large diking system as well. And so Mr. Clark made some connections there, really to follow up and have some alignment on the seismic discussions we've been having with Inspector of Dikes in Flinroe. Other than that, there were some updates from Lilwat on the Polyard Dike, the Birkenhead monitoring gauge, which they're still haven't installed yet, but are hoping to move ahead with. What else is there? We talked a little bit about the hydrometric annual cost for the hydrometric gauges, which we have as a topic later under this section of the agenda as well. Other than that, it was a relatively quick meeting, and we're not sure if we're going to have our next meeting in August or September. I just wanted to provide a bit of an update that there's a lot happening, which is good. We want to do it now, even though we had a high water event. I'm sure we'll most likely see something again in the fall, which is our typical time for high water events. So good to be prepared and identify areas of concern.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Carry on.
Okay, so the second report I have today is the second quarter Office of the CAO and Strategic Priorities update. We have traditionally brought the strategic priorities update about twice a year. Now we'll be bringing them to align with the remaining quarterly reports from other departments. We've also added just a little bit more detail specifically on the tasks that the Office of the CAO has done and undertaken in the last quarter. So starting off the discussions, we just wanted to talk about a bit of the transition that we've seen over the end of 2020 and 2021. So we recruited and filled the communication and grant coordinator position, human resources coordinator / executive assistant. And we also made the emergency program coordinator. She transitioned from a part-time position in July to a full-time position. As well, we also recruited for a new position called the project and research coordinator. And this was all between December and January this year, well, December of last year. Little bit of snippets on each of those roles. We talk a little bit about what emergency management has been doing. So we have, all of us, this department, we've created a resource and recovery group, which is sort of the EOC of COVID-19. We also discuss any kind of policies or procedures we're bringing forward. We touch in on the, the public health orders, et cetera. So each member has been part of that. Also launched a community disaster resilience planning partnership with GIBC. We were actually one of 2 communities that have been selected to participate in this, no cost to us, but we helped to build a platform that we'll be able to use, which is actually a former employee of ours. Bettina had reached out to us to see if we would participate in this. So we have some connections at the GIBC, which will end up helping us in the end. We're thankful for that. Something that we had wanted to do is we applied for funding. We really want to make sure we're ready in the case of an emergency. And as what happened is we have all of our new staff that are coming in who take specific positions, and those who are new to the organization taking their EOC essentials. And so we finished those trainings, and we also had a tabletop exercise, which we received grant funding for, which primed and prepped us for when we had our high water event. So it was actually a good testing ground to be able to have some real-time experience without the major impacts of something more serious. High water event that we all dealt with as well. Communications and grants, as you've seen over the past few months, we've applied for a number of grants. You'll see more on today's agenda. The communication and grant coordinator also was integral in creating and launching the One Pemberton site, which was came out of the Mayor's Task Force. Have Your Say was a new engagement platform. We've used that for the Affordable Housing Action Plan communications, as well as Climate Action Plan and the Pemberton Valley Transit Study. And again, looking at making consistent branding across the organization and developing a communication plan so that we can have timely engagement processes. HR, Human Resources. This has been a very busy role as well with the recruiting, but also for policy development on sick leave. How do we manage and mitigate through COVID-19, the changing public health orders, how we restart. So this has been a very policy related and recruiting time for this role. We also, this person also led the Permanent Bursary Award Program. Project and research. So this position actually works hand in hand with several departments, but also with the communication and grant coordinator in providing that technical data so that we can either be prepared by making project profiles and so that we can be successful in applying for grant funding. Also assisting with transit, that has been a huge help, as well as helping through the Pemberton Waste Transfer Station subdivision. Work on the economic development plan and strategy has also been taking place. We are reconsidering some of the outcomes of that to consider what a restart for COVID-19 will be. So we'll bring that forward at a later date for council to review. Also, this position is part of attends the Tourism Pemberton meetings, liaises with Tourism Pemberton, the Chamber, Destination BC, Sea to Sky. So I've also identified for council, starting on Appendix A, so page 21, where we're at as far as a snapshot for the strategic priorities. I'm not going to go through too many of these as I can answer questions. Also, all of the managers are here to talk about on their quarterly reports, which do often touch on some of these. So I don't want to sort of go and report on that before they have the ability to do that. So maybe I'll just see if anyone has any questions on any of those initiatives, and we can go that way if you're good. That approach.
Questions? Mr. Craddock, go ahead.
Thank you very much to the administrator. On the municipal facilities, you say the design is nearly completed and we might be looking at it in September.
The RFP, the request for proposals that we'll be putting out will be done and issued around September.
Oh, just a request will be put out.
Yes.
Okay. Will council have a chance to have a look at that before it goes out?
Not the RFP. We'll bring forward it's for the fire hall and municipal hall, and it's really just asking for different options. So we'll bring back the award if that is the case. If it's under, well, we'll be under 100,000. But I'll make sure I keep you updated. I'm hoping that we have some specific people who have been interested, and we're going to send it out to them directly, but we're also going to put a larger call for proposals as well.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Ms. Dimmer?
Okay, Ms. Hutchison will join us for the next.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, can we get a motion to receive?
It's all
that one?
in report. Do we need a separate motion? Chief?
No, yeah, each one has a report.
Yeah, we'll need a motion to receive the second quarter CAO office.
Okay, moved by Councillor Zant, second by Councillor Noble. Discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll give Ms. Hutchinson a chance to join us.
Hello.
Good morning, Ms. Hutchinson. Thank you for joining us. When you're all set up, we're ready to talk about the infrastructure grant for the Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. I'll turn over to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me here this morning. So the purpose of this report is to seek support for a reconsideration application to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program for the Friendship Trail, Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. So Council may recall at the regular Council meeting number 1508 held on Tuesday, February 11th, 2020, Council passed a resolution to support an application to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program. for the construction of one of the final phases of the Friendship Trail, the Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. The application was submitted on February 20, 2020, but unfortunately this application was unsuccessful. The 2021-22 intake of the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program includes a reconsideration application option for communities that submitted an unsuccessful application for the 2020-21 grant program intake. Through this program, the province provides cost share funding of up to $500,000 per project, with up to 70% of total eligible project costs covered. Council may also recall that at the regular council meeting last month, so council meeting 1540 held on Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, council passed a resolution to support a grant application to the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative for a similar project that included the construction of the same component of the Friendship Trail, as well as a cultural acknowledgement component, including cultural recognition installations and bollard lighting. The Canada Healthy Communities application is still pending. However, staff did not want to miss the opportunity that the reconsideration application option of the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program presented, and therefore would like to ask Council for their support for this application as well. It should be noted that the scope of the project to be submitted to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program includes only the construction of the trail and does not include the cultural acknowledgement component, as this didn't fit within the eligibility criteria of this grant program. In terms of the costings, the Class C cost estimate totals $661,760. If the application were successful, $463,232 would be covered by the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program. So staff would recommend Council allocate an amount up to $198,528 from the Gas Tax Community Works Fund to cover the remainder. So the recommendation that Council support the Village of Pemberton's reconsideration application to the BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program up to amount of $661,760 to go towards Friendship Trail, Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. And I think we've got a mistake there, apologies. That should be $463,232.
No, I think we need to, it's the whole grant submission, even though the eligible amount is for, yeah.
Sorry, the second recommendation, that Council allocate an amount up to $198,528 from Gas Tax Community Works Fund to cover the remainder. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very much. Any questions? Councillor Craddock.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the report. I hope we're successful this time. It has to be in by July 30th. Any idea, Ms. Hutchinson, when we might hear back on this one?
No, I haven't got a date. They have indicated on the website late summer. So I would presume that that would be, you know, before September 20 something, but they haven't got a specific date.
And the time frame that we have to use the funds, do we have to get it done this fall, or do we get a year to kind of finish the project?
Yeah, I believe we have until 2023, actually. CAO Gilmore, I'm not sure if you remember the exact date on that.
That's good enough. I just want to make sure we're not pushed to do it in the fall.
Yeah, no, we've got time for this one.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Antonelli.
I'm just wondering what else we could be using the gas tax fund for.
CAO Gilmore, I might defer to you on this one.
The gas tax, Community Works Gas Tax Fund is actually has quite a lot of uses that we can apply towards for projects. Right now, we're focusing on our shelf-ready projects and trying to allocate gas tax towards matching when we have a matching component. We do have a significant amount in reserves at this time. However, we are going to need to come up with a plan to allocate them towards projects, as this gas tax program is going to be coming to an end, I believe, in 2022 or 2023. So we will be bringing some information forward to council And we obviously discussed this at all of our budget meetings. So some of the things we've allocated in the past or just recently is the economic development strategy. So lighting for transit, Friendship Trail. Typically with this active transportation, BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant, they don't allow matching from gas tax, but they are allowing it this time. They didn't allow it previously when we received funding for the Friendship Trail Bridge. So the amount that we have in here would not deplete at all the gas tax funds. Ms. Hutchison, did you have that number handy?
Yes, I do. So the remaining amount for 2021 year-end estimate was 634,146. So $634,146 for the gas tax fund.
And we get about $120,000 each year.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I'm supportive of this, but in the future, it would be nice to have a bigger picture to know how it's all going to be spent the last year of it.
Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, just through again to Ms. Hutchison, with the gas tax funds that Councillor Antonelli asked about, if that program ends in 22-23, do those funds have to be expended by that time, or can they be carried over?
C.L. Gilmore.
I'll have to take that one. We had to submit an acknowledgement to the program funders this year that says we have to spend them. So there will be no rollover. So we'll be developing a plan and identifying projects, which actually is quite broad. So there's water, sewer, transportation. There's also some feasibility, not necessarily feasibility, sustainability plans that we can also allocate towards projects. So what we'll need to do is when we're contemplating in the fall, when we're looking at projects through strategic planning, we can identify which projects could be eligible, but we're also going to need to track and make sure that we are spending those funds as we get to the end. We have been relatively conservative because there is quite a lot of leeway on projects because there are a lot of different eligible expenses that we can use. But at this point, we're going to need to start spending them.
Thanks very much.
Suzanne.
Yeah, just a question for Ms. Gilmore. I think you pretty much answered it, but I'm just curious about the gas taxes again. And you mentioned that the gas tax fund will come to an end in 2022. Do you know if there is another program that's going to be made available to the municipalities for funds like this?
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point. It might be 2023 actually that it comes to an end. I can confirm that for you. Yeah, we don't have any information on what that might look like.
Okay, and I have one more question, if I may. What I'm also wondering about is, you mentioned that the gas tax has there's a lot of different things we can use those funds for. Whenever we do a project like this, do we have to wait for approval from the grant funders to say, yes, you can use these funds for this project, or is it pretty much left in the hands of the municipality and they're in good faith?
Well, we need to give certainty in this particular grant. We need to give certainty on where those funds will be coming from. So they have identified that Gas Tax Community Works Fund matching funds are eligible. So we need to make that commitment. That's why it's in the resolution. But typically, it's up to us to determine what we can use those funds for. But we also are held accountable because we do need to file annual reports on our use and how it tracks back to an eligible expense. And actually, the province lists this on their website when you look at that program about previously projects that have been completed using the funds. So there's definitely an accountability section to that as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Gilmore.
Welcome.
And there's no more questions. Would somebody like to move the recommendation as presented? Councillor Noble, second by Councillor Zant. Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Hutchison, before you go, I know we still haven't heard back from our Park and Ride application there. Would would that project fit into the active transportation stream? Is there any value to sending that one along as well? Can we make 2 applications?
I believe we can only make 1 application, and that includes both the reconsideration and a new application. So you can't do a new application as well as a reconsideration application. So I might refer to CAO Gilmore on the consideration of the Park and Ride though.
I'm sure it probably could be an eligible application that we can put in. At this point, we just don't have the time in order to put that in. So we've chosen this as it's one. We actually did receive some correspondence on the, not as to the success of the grant, but requiring additional information on the Park and Ride grant. So I do believe they're getting closer. But yeah, at this time, this is the last section that we would be responsible for as far as the Friendship Trail. And so we really are trying to get this as sort of the last project, shelf-ready project we have to go forward. It's also a smaller amount. I think 1.5 or 1.3 million is what we were looking at. And it was 100% funding, whereas this is 70%. And then where would we come up with the remaining? So this sort of seemed as a better fit, not only for the matching component, but the fact that we could just submit a resubmission, which is a lot less work.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you, Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you.
Have Ms. White join us next. Good morning, Ms. White. Thank you for joining us. When you're ready, we're all very anxious to hear about the VOP restart plan. It's all yours.
Good. Thank you very much for having me this morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to talk through the transition that the Village of Pemberton has made for our staff in relation to the BC Restart Plan. As I'm sure most of you are aware, the Restart Plan was initiated on the 25th of May, and it includes a number of steps that, as a province, we're working towards as we achieve specific milestones in relation to COVID-19 and the pandemic. The Restart Plan provides guidance for a number of different areas. And so these areas include things like travel restrictions, personal gatherings, organized gatherings and recreation. What you'll find is there's also specific guidance provided for offices and workplaces as well. So as an employer, what we've been doing is keeping a close eye on the guidance specific to offices and workplaces and how these changes impact us as an organization. At the moment, we sit in step 3 of the BC Restart Plan. And so what that means is that we're allowed to continue returning staff to the workplace. We're also allowed to hold seminars and bigger meetings in person now, should we wish to. And we're also able to transition away from COVID-19 safety plans that were introduced last year and move more towards a general communicable disease prevention plan. The communicable disease prevention plan that we've introduced effectively allows the Village of Pemberton to flex between several measures, including physical distancing, mask use, occupancy limits within village facilities. It also allows us to kind of flex those in accordance with either a public health order or if we have a local outbreak of a communicable disease such as COVID-19. Following the transition into step 3, what we decided to do was ease the use of daily health screenings for our staff members, reduce the mask wearing policy down to match the recommendations from public health. We've also transitioned away from mandatory physical distancing to approach where we're asking staff to be mindful of those working in close proximity to one another. It's likely we're going to continue to see measures such as self-monitoring for symptoms of sickness and illness, and we'll likely also continue the use of physical barriers like plexiglass in some of our high volume and customer-focused locations. There's also some measures now that WorkSafe BC have asked all employers to maintain at all times. And those measures include the promotion of hand hygiene with the use of sanitization stations, maintaining clean and hygienic work environments, but also ensuring that building ventilation is functioning as designed and is properly maintained. At this time, the village has also eased off on a number of occupancy limits for most of our locations. What council will notice in my report is that there is one exception, and that is the municipal hall. And we've decided to keep our current occupancy limit to 8 members of staff at a time. So what that does mean is that there are still a few staff members who are going to be required to work from home until that number is lifted. I just wanted to share with council the reasons why we've kept that limit in place. And so there's a few different reasons here. And I think one of them being, since the start of the pandemic, we have seen a slight increase of headcount with staff. And so what that means is that right now, if we were fully staffed and if we asked everybody to return to the municipal office as their working location, the current setup that we have right now means that we've got at least 3 people without a desk space. We've also sought feedback from staff members as we've been working towards and through the restart plan. And so what we've identified through that feedback is that, you know, some of the staff that are working from home right now, they are a little bit concerned about the crowded and cramped nature of the municipal office. And they've also identified that they would, you know, prefer to have the opportunity to receive their second vaccination dose before making the return back to the office location as well. And as another point, we did also take into account the new requirements from WorkSafe BC with regards to a fully functioning ventilation system. And as council might be aware, we did experience a couple of challenges with our air conditioning within the municipal hall throughout the heat wave in June. And so all those challenges have been fixed and we do have air conditioning back. We do just want to take a little bit of extra precaution there to ensure that the ventilation systems are fully in line with the WorkSafe BC requirements now before we increase that occupancy limit at Municipal Hall. My hope is that as we get closer to the anticipated step 4 of the BC Restart Plan, which should be around September the 7th, providing the province continues to hit all of the milestones that are in place, by that point, hopefully we'll have obtained a bit more information about the functionality of our ventilation system at Municipal Hall. Hopefully most of our staff will have had the opportunity by that point to receive their second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. And what I'm also hopeful of is that we'll be able to identify a few options with regards to the layout and the spacing and access to Municipal Hall specifically as a workplace, to ensure that we can accommodate our entire workforce back into that building once again in as safe a manner as possible. I think that concludes my summary of the report, and happy to take any questions or comments from Mayor and Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report, Ms. White. So sorry, just to be clear, the 8 maximum number, that is anticipated to be held until the beginning of September. That's what you're considering at this point?
I think that's most likely what we're looking at the moment, and that just gives us a little bit more time to explore the ventilation and just confirm that it is fully in line with the WorkSafe BC requirements, and it just gives us a little bit more time to look at the layout of the office as well and explore some options there to see how we can increase that desk space.
And the goal at that point, and maybe it's not, you haven't identified the goal specifically, but the goal at that point is to have a bit of a hybrid approach where some staff have the ability to work some days remotely and other days from the office and have a rotation that works that way.
I think that would be nice, and it's certainly something that from some of the surveys that we've done, there's definitely an appreciation from staff to have a bit more flexibility and to continue, the occasional working from home. So that's definitely up there, and one of the considerations I think that would make quite a lot of sense. So yeah, I think that could be a potential option for sure.
Great, thank you. Questions from council? Councillor Paddock, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks for the report, Ms. White. I'm wondering what your plans are for council chambers. I'm sitting here by myself in council chambers, which is nice for a long period of time. But I'm wondering, due to lack of ventilation and potentially having the community come and sit and join, what do you see as the plans going forward?
Yeah. I might defer to Sarah Gilmore on that one. I don't know if there's a separate report potentially on the council chambers specifically.
We have we're waiting for the province to introduce some new, I guess, electronic meeting legislation that we will need to look at. Some things we'll need to continue to allow for the public and I guess staff and council members to do is to attend electronic meetings, but we also, the public and those attending electronically, need to have certainty in being able to hear and see what is happening at those council meetings. So at this point, whether or not we have some type of council returns to the council chambers with a couple of staff, and others may have to still attend electronically. Those are some things that we need to continue to work through. We understand that that specific legislation will happen in September. I think we're hoping to see more things return to normal in September. That is sort of part 2 of what that looks like. Fortunately, we have one meeting in August and one meeting in September. So this will give us a little bit more time without having the 2 meetings in each of those months. But it'll be something that I want to work closely with Ms. Fraser on as well from that perspective. And we haven't delved into that one as much as we have to getting staff back into the office.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no questions, again, thank you for that, Ms. White. I'm anxious to see where we go. You know, you're watching different municipalities and different organizations take different approaches. The hybrid sort of model seems to be the one that quite popular at this point, although some are going for full remote work being allowed. I mean, for me personally, I look forward to seeing what that looks like, because I think, as we've talked about before, we are missing within the office certain dynamics that are important to a strong team, that connectedness, that ability to connect with each other, the ability to connect with one's managers, as well as co-workers, the social aspect of it. But also seeing the results of the survey, that people obviously do appreciate the ability and the flexibility to work at home. So I'm hoping that a hybrid model will accommodate all of that and bring back some of the important dynamics that we are missing in the office, and allow us to work with the limited space we have. So thank you for all the work you're doing that, and we look forward to seeing more. Can I get a motion to receive, please?
Motion received.
Councillor Zan, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We're on to the PVDD request for funds on River Gauge program. Ms. Gilmore, I believe you're talking to.
Yes. So as discussed earlier on under my verbal update, we have a committee, the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee, that's made up of the Village of Pemberton, the SLRD, Lewat Nation, and the Pemberton Valley Dyking District. Over the past 2 years or so, we have applied for funding for a variety of joint emergency management measures, one of which are several gauges, which will increase river forecasting, especially in events similar to the one we just had, where there's a lot of high water. We often think about the Lillooet River, and we've had a gauge on the Lillooet River for a number of years. It gives us great data, but it actually doesn't contemplate, it's all the way up in the upper Lillooet. So it doesn't actually contemplate what the impacts to all of the other waterways entering the Lillooet River have. You'll note when we have the gauge down at the crossing by the Friendship Trail Bridge, that level comes up quite high. It's quite shocking when you see that, but we have at that point the Ryan and the Miller often making a significant impact to the levels there. So in order to sort of have a comprehensive look at the valley of all of the waterways and how that might impact us for flooding, we have been successful in achieving funding for several of these rivers, and where they haven't been, other initiatives have been put in place. I believe as River Forecast Center is assisting us on 1 or 2 of those as well. So we've all had conversations about this. Both Lewat and SLRD have indicated that they're happy to bring this forward for discussion through budget in 2022. I had said that I assumed that would be a similar situation to the village, but I wanted to bring that here to have a conversation. I think we need to think about this as more of an emergency management initiative than a Pemberton Valley Dyking District initiative. We will all the jurisdictions, as previously mentioned, will receive login information to check the real-time data. The Dyking District has within the last year and a bit has been very good about disseminating that information and sharing it with the group as well. We all still receive real-time data between the jurisdictions currently of the upper Lillooet gauge by way of alerts and photos being shared if there are significant elevations or drop in the river. So at this point, the request is to look To the Pembroton Valley Dyking District would cover 40% of those expenses, which is the line, well, is a larger share. And then the request is that Lilwat, SLRD, and Village cover the other 60%. As this is an unknown right now, this is the conversation we had at our meeting last week. It's a bit of an unknown as to whether in the beginning there might be less expenses than we anticipate. And as the gauge deteriorates over years, there may be some additional maintenance. So one of the suggestions that I put forward is what we may want to consider. And this actually, Mr. Clark brought up a conversation about the options of doing this, but is that we set a certain amount that we could allocate each year. And I would suggest that each entity, or at least speaking from the village's perspective, we could hold that over in a reserve account for that particular, for the gauges, so that if something comes up in the future and we need some additional funds to do a bigger repair job, we would have it. Or if, so that we could just sort of build a little bit of a pot for it so that we're not having a big hit on the taxpayers. So it's something we can have a discussion with. I can bring more information forward when we have this at budget. At this time, staff would support referring this to the budget for 2022. I've been advised, I asked, will there be any costs this year? And to which, if there are, the Dyking District will cover those. And that realistically, this conversation is for 2022 and beyond.
Great, thank you. Some questions? Right.
Yeah, we're going to discuss it in the budget come this fall, but again, I guess there's a couple items that concern me a little bit. First of all, it's now going to become a line item that's going to be there forever against the village and our taxpayers for Pemberton Valley Dyking District project. We will receive some information from it, but we already, excuse me, we already do. I would much prefer to see us and the Dyking District find this money through taxation. They have a taxing authority just like we do. When we need funds, we have to go to the community and pick those up. I think it'd be hard for the Dyking District to have a proper budget when they're going outside of their own budget to find funds from other funders. So I'm having a real issue with this. To go to the community and say, well, you're paying Dyking taxes over here, and you're also paying Dyking taxes in the community because we're helping fund some new gauges and that. I do have some issues with that. And I think it would be a lot easier for the Dyking District to look after this small amount of money through their own budget and tax people accordingly.
Thank you. So maybe just to follow up on that, I mean, a couple of things there. Number one, if we were to go that route, that could complicate matters in the sense that Lilwat Nation is not included in that taxation through the Dyking District. And therefore there would have to be some other consideration for them to be able to contribute. I don't know that there would be an appetite to contribute if we just stuck with Dyking contribution, but I don't know. And then the other thing, my only other thought on it is that, maybe I'll ask this to the CAO. It seems to me that these river gauges have uses beyond the Pemberton Valley Dyking District work, that they help inform our emergency operations, that they give us information in terms of how we manage. The Dyking District manages Dyking infrastructure. We're in charge of evacuation. We're in charge of emergency response. We set the EOCs. Do these gauges, and therefore the funds to support these gauges, do they support our work on emergency preparedness and emergency response? I'd ask that.
Yeah, I would say that that is the primary function of these river gauges. The only dikes are on the Lilwat, and I think, we applied for these funds under emergency management funds, not under improvements necessarily for the Dyking District. I see this as a project that came out of the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee. And I don't think the Dyking District would have pursued this necessarily if it wasn't from an emergency management perspective. I think that's the top lens, and that's why the request is coming in. Obviously, they're saying they'll contribute a little bit more. Maybe they, some of the information and data will help them. But I think that This is not something that the Diking District is necessarily responsible for. They're, yeah, responsible for maintaining the dikes. And I see this as just being an added benefit for all of those in the valley.
Thank you. I haven't heard that. I would support the funding. I think that what we saw a month ago, not even whenever it was, high water and the potential for some major flooding had gotten much worse. You know, we made emergency preparedness and response a strategic priority. And to me, this is a step in that direction to being that much more prepared and being able to get and give the right information to and for our residents. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think, as the CEO said, it comes out of our PVMC committee. It was a joint sort of initiative. So I'm happy to support it. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Zanth and Councillor Noble.
Just through the administrator. So the 40% that the PVD is talking about comes through there, is coming out of their taxation through the village, or not through the village, but against the village residents. That's correct.
Village and SLRD.
Right.
Yes.
And
That's the tax base for the Diking District.
right. And as you mentioned before, the river gauges they want to install came out of our EOC committee meetings with PVAD. Is there, because we've approved grants for our EOC meetings, is there grants within UBCM to support these river gauges, the new river gauges we want to install? Could we go that direction instead of directly against taxpayers?
There are virtually little to no funds for ongoing maintenance of projects. Funders are typically supportive of the capital expense, and then it's up to whoever has received the funding to implement or must then maintain and replace as it goes forward. I would say replacement could potentially also be a future grant funding if it's needed. But if we take good care of the gauges, you would hope that they'd have a great life expectancy.
Sorry, Mayor Richard, may I ask one more question?
Sure, and just to further answer your first question, it didn't come out of the EOC meetings with PVDD. It came out of the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee, which is memberships of the Village of Pemberton, SLRD, PVD, and Lewis Nation. So it came from that committee, not out of an EOC with the PVD.
Thank you.
Go ahead. What's your other question?
Well, you mentioned that some of these gauges will be brand new gauges. Is that correct?
All of them except the Lillooet, the upper Lillooet gauge, which has been
Right.
there since 2015, is that one?
Okay. All
slide
I'm
first?
driving at, sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I'm
All I
good.
was driving at is that if you mentioned that there's not a lot of grant funding for maintaining these systems, but if these are brand new gauges you want to install in areas that have been identified as problem areas, then maybe it's that direction. It's more of a comment than a question. But I support the funding. Looking forward to the discussion of the budget.
I can make a note. We do actually contribute towards the upper Lillooet gauge as well.
And it's much about monitoring as it is about the maintenance of the actual gauge.
Right.
And that's
Thank
why the funds, Mr. Clark felt that he was overestimating to be conservative on the cost. We'll know a little bit more after our first year, obviously. But Councillor Noble.
I feel that with our flood risks increasing every season, that it's pretty important to be able to monitor this, and I would support referring it to the 2022 budget process.
Would you like to make that motion?
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Second or further discussion?
One more question.
Go ahead, and then Councillor Antonelli.
Just in regards to, so the river gauges are early warning type system, correct?
The upper Lillooet it signals a significant an increase in the elevation of the water or a significant decrease, which was installed as a result of the Meager landslide, which blocked the river.
Right.
So that's the intention of that. These, I'm not exactly sure how the data is translated. It'll be a little bit different than what the upper Lillooet gauge looks like and the data that it gives, because it will be sort of real-time data that you can access to see what the flows are, et cetera.
Because I remember one of our very first meetings in the Great Hall, I believe it was Chief Dean had mentioned just the early warning for our neighbors. And I'm wondering with these gauges, if this gives us a warning, then obviously we would contact our neighbors and say, hey, just so you're aware.
Some of
In
the,
saying that, it just supporting these river gauges, but it's just a thought that came to mind about the early warning for our neighbors as well.
what we have been advised is that, when you've looked at what's happened with the Lillooet River, taking the sediment out of the equation, just dealing with water. And we have about 12 hours, 8 to 12 hours from when we're starting to see something happening up at the upper Lillooet to when it actually comes down into town here and starts making problems. So what we've noticed, and Mr. Clark has actually been paying attention to some of these happenings, is that we won't see anything significant happening in the upper Lillooet, where a localized weather system has actually stopped around the Ryan Creek or Miller Creek area and has a significant amount of rain that's coming down. And all of a sudden, we see that there's flooding issues happening in town. And so what it is a better system for us to be able to plan for emergency management and potential evacuation or sandbagging or whatever that has to be, when we actually understand what all of the other rivers and or creeks are doing at different levels, because they all obviously connect at different level areas along the Lillooet River. And this is sort of why it's more from an emergency management perspective, when we can give adequate notice and start preparing for what may be coming when the one gauge up the valley is not giving us any significant readings.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore.
And also, Councillor Zant, the information that will come from these gauges will be automatically provided to Lillooet at the same time. So it's not a matter
Excellent.
of relaying that information. They will have it live, just like we do.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Antonelli, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think emergency management is super important. I'm glad it's a priority, and I support discussing this more as part of the 2022 budget. But I also do think that it's a little bit of a gray area between emergency management and Dike District responsibilities, and I think we should be really clear that future funding requests for items related to the Dike District really should be coming through the Dike District funding. But, I really understand the value of this and want to support it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Question, any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. We're on to 9B. Corporate Legislative Services. Ms. Fraser is going to talk to us about the appointment of financial officer.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. As you are aware, Ms. Lena Martin, who's been our manager of finance since 2015, has taken a position down in the Lower Mainland and will be leaving us in August. And as a result of that, we need to rescind her appointment as the Chief Financial Officer. And as we do not have a replacement for her at this time, but are in the process of recruiting, we're recommending that Nikki Gilmore, our CAO, be appointed in the interim, the Chief Financial Officer. This is a position that Ms. Gilmore has held in the past prior to her appointment as CAO, and also during her initial year as CAO, wore both hats. And it's not uncommon in smaller communities for the CAO to also be the Chief Financial Officer. So this would not be something that is unusual in the interim. So the resolution, the other thing that we need to do as part of the resolution is to remove Ms. Martin as a signing authority and make that adjustment as a signing authority. And then when we hire a new finance manager, if they are appointed the CFO, then they would be added on. So upon the hiring of a new finance manager, obviously we would be bringing back another report to make appropriate appointments as necessary. So the resolution before council at this point is that the appointment of Lena Martin as financial officer for the Village of Pemberton be rescinded effective August 6th, 2021, which is her last day with us, that Ms. Nikki Gilmore be appointed as finance officer with all the duties and responsibilities assigned under Section 149 of the Community Charter and our officer's bylaw, effective that same date, and that Ms. Martin be removed as administrative signing authority for the village on our TD Bank account, the Village Pemberton Scotia Bank account, and the North Shore Credit Union account, and that Ms. Martin be removed as a signing authority on all authorizations from MFA by the village. We do not need to appoint Ms. Gilmore in that same position because she's already a signing officer as in her capacity as CAO.
Thanks, Ms. Fraser. Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, I'd move all 4 recommendations.
Seconder. Councillor Noble, any discussion?
Uh,
Opposed? Is that discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Zhang.
Discussion. I'm just curious if there are any applicants in the queue right now.
I'll defer to
potentially,
CA Gilmore.
Potentially, we can discuss that after. If we could discuss that.
In camera?
Yeah, please.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
That's it.
Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll stay with Ms. Fraser. We're going on 9B2, which is outstanding resolutions.
So here's the start of all of your second quarter reports after the CAO's strategic priorities. This is a listing of the outstanding resolutions as of June 30th. You'll note that there are several that are still in place from previous council under affordable housing, the boundary extension, and single-use strategies. So those are aligned with previous council. When I reported the first quarter, we had no additional resolutions added in the first quarter, but under the second quarter, we've had 3 resolutions related to the Crown Land tenure application for the Lillooet River Park and boat launch, the Pemberton Bursary Policy Amendment, and the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. So those 3 items have been added to the work plan, and staff will be moving them forward as they are able based on the workload that they currently have. So this is before council for information. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor Zant, go ahead.
Motion to receive.
Seconder. Councillor Antonelli, any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And you can lead us right into where are you? Second quarter administration update, CLS.
So this is a new report that we're bringing forward as the function of administrative services is moved to corporate and legislative services. We felt that it was important to report out on some of the activities at the administrative level that we deal with in terms of our day-to-day operations. This report actually reflects the numbers from both the first and second quarter as up to June 30th. And what we've done is just sort of broken down some of the information and related to freedom of information requests, business license, dog license, customer service requests, enforcement tickets issued, sent to collections, our water use permit numbers, film permits, hen keeping permits. And then we did touch on park use permits, which were previously a function of administration, but have now moved to rec services. So that would be something that I just felt we wanted to sort of put a little bit of a number to based on previous years, but will be something that Ms. Burns will be incorporating into her reports. I also added in, just because this is a brand new report, we've never had these numbers presented to council in this way before, to provide council with a bit of a touchstone added in for the years 2019 and 2020, as well as 2021 to date. And so we'll probably keep those 2 numbers overall just for the next few reports so that we have a bit of a breakdown. The numbers more or less speak for themselves. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor Craddock.
Thanks very much, Mayor Richmond. Ms. Fraser, just wondering, under water use permits, does that include swimming pools?
No, that is related to our sprinkling regulations, and it sets out if somebody has put in new plantings or new grass or sod or new trees because of landscaping works that have been done, residents can apply to the village for a water use permit. And when this is usually when we hit level 3, as we're at now. And it gives those residents or property owners the opportunity to water outside the restrictions. Public Works takes a look at the work that has been done. They evaluate it and they provide them with, provide the property owner with the conditions under which they can water outside the restrictions. So we have received quite a number of water use restrictions this year. Because of the amount of landscaping that's taking place.
There seems to be a lot of new swimming pools in town, which is great because I know the kids are really enjoying them. What is the requirement if you're putting a swimming pool in as far as water use?
There is, as I understand, and Miss Martin could probably speak to this better, we do have a swimming pool water utility rate. And I'm not clear on whether that is related to sort of those Canadian Tire above ground pools that come in various sizes, shapes, and forms. There are regulations around more permanent pools in that you have to get a permit, a building permit through the building department, but I'm not fully involved in that. So there are some, and I would guess that, if you get a building permit for a pool, that kicks in for finance to charge for the pool rate. But I do not believe that we have a rate for the sort of above ground temporary pools. These are for the permanent pools.
Okay, and the reason I bring it up, I know previously on the regional board, they had some restrictions about making sure property was fenced and you had gates that lock and all that type of thing. I'm just wondering at some point in the future through the administrator, would that be a good thing to put in our e-news just to remind people? I do see a number of swimming pools, which I'm in favor of, but their yards are not fenced at all. And obviously concerned for what may come out of liability on that if people aren't aware of what's required.
I think that would be a hard one to manage, whether or not we put some information out. I know some of those above ground pools that are relatively high, they can take a ladder out and then it restricts the ability necessarily of a younger child to get into it. Of course, kids are resourceful, so we don't want to just say, oh, well, you can take the ladder out, kids are safe. We can look at incorporating some kind of best practices or safe measures if you're installing those types of pools. For us, I think, as Ms. Fraser said, in our building bylaw, there are requirements that if you're installing a swimming pool, that it must be fenced with a gate and no access. But if those other Canadian Tire or other types of pools are put in, we often aren't aware of it because there's no process to trigger that. But like as I mentioned, I'm happy to bring that forward and we can contemplate what some messaging to the public might be.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm just being cautious because we all know that we were all young at one time, and swimming pools on a hot day when no one's home next door were pretty inviting. I'd hate to see any issues happen because of that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay. Did I get a motion to receive on this yet?
No.
Suzanne, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Fraser. We're going to move on to finance. So we'll have Lena join us. Ms. Martin.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning to Mayor and Council.
It's all yours.
All right. Well, we are here to provide council with the second quarter financial statements for review and receipt. The Village of Pemberton is currently halfway through the fiscal year. At this point, the collection of revenues and outlay of expenses should be around the 50% mark. However, revenues are slightly higher than this percentile. Staff will continue to monitor the current environment and cash flows to be on budget at year end. On our the consolidated statement, which is Appendix A, indicates that approximately 73% of the revenues have been collected to June 30th. This is due in part to taxes and utilities being received and project grants that have been collected in advance. Additional quarterly revenues and grants will be earned through year end. And as a note, that's almost exactly where we were last year, which is quite interesting. On the expenditure side, a total of 60% of the budgeted amounts have been expensed. Large projects are still underway, and some expenses such as snow clearing will take place seasonally. Some budgeted seasonal expenses have completed, such as park startup, hazardous trees removals, and landscaping. Other small grants and projects have also completed, including the off-leash dog park, Public Works washroom, which is probably 99% complete, and Public Works roof repair. Percentages are slightly affected by the annual transfers to other governments. Removing these collections shows the Village of Pemberton services at 65% of revenues collected and 42% of expenditures incurred. Current large projects in the 2021 work plan include the second soccer field and amenity building, the Bike Skills Park, Pebble Creek Road recovery, water treatment preliminary design, SCADA upgrades, generators for water and sewer servicing, Pemberton Farm Road East Friendship Trail, community wildfire protection, development cost charge bylaw, capital equipment purchases, water and sewer rate analysis, Pemberton District Community Center outdoor basketball court, and asset management. These projects will incur additional revenues and expenditures in quarters 3 and 4. In 2020, the province provided enhanced relief for businesses by reducing most commercial property tax bills by an average of 25%. For 2021, Council passed an alternative tax collection scheme that reduced the late penalty to 5% in July and 5% in October. At July 20th, 2021, there was $705,290 outstanding in current taxes and utilities, or 9.5% unpaid, which is better than average at this time of year. The remaining taxes and utilities will be due September 30th, 2021, under the alternative tax collection scheme. The COVID recovery grant was received in 2020 to support projects and revenue shortfalls. Eligible expenditures to date are $80,123. Revenue from this grant will be added at year end to offset these expenditures. An operating reserve of $206,960 was budgeted to support a deficit and has not been utilized at this time. It is expected that the Village of Pemberton will be on budget at year end. If you'd like to go through our appendix, we have some notes that we can point to some specific line items. You'll have to help me find which number that is on the agenda. We're just going through some general items on our each department. In our first department, that is just our general taxation department, there are still some revenues coming in. Those are identified by the number 1. You'll see these occur in Q3 and Q4. In our admin department, you can see that our community wildfire protection grant has not been received yet. Our bylaw truck has been ordered, but is not posted. We'll see something in Q3 and Q4. Our operating reserve and COVID grants are applied at year end. And we have additional annual expenditures that have been posted and have hit their maximum. And those are showing at 90 to 100% completed. In our legislative department, we have a little bit of COVID grant funding that was put aside for advertising, which will be applied at year end when we reconcile our COVID grant. In our fire department, we have a few items. The contributions are posted to June. So some of those are posted just at 50%, and the additional postings will occur in Q3 and Q4. We've received a Fire Smart grant this year that was not originally budgeted for. So we'll see increases in revenues with no budget. We have some COVID grants and capital reserves that are posted as the capital reserve ones will be posted as those capital items are purchased, and the COVID grant will be posted at year end. And again, we have some annual expenditures that have met their maximum, and we won't see additional expenditures for the remaining of the year. And then we have some outstanding projects like portable radios, the fencing, the fire hall design, the mini repeater purchase, and the gas detectors. Moving into development services, we have some COVID recovery in this department as well. Under salaries, we have an unfilled position for a planner. There are some additional annual expenditures that you will see throughout the expenses. And then we have some outstanding projects with the DCC bylaw and the climate action plan. And we'll see postings in Q3 and Q4. Then with our public works and parks, with lots going on in public works and parks, starting with there's a lot of grant funding that will come in as projects move forward, such as the soccer field, the skills park, the farm roadies, the Pebble Creek recovery, the EV chargers, and the speed readers. All of those grants will be applied as the expenses are posted. We also put down our deposit for our loader, but the full price of the loader has not been posted. We'll see that in Q3. We have, again, additional annual expenditures in this budget. There are seasonal equipment repairs where we don't see expenses posted in Q3 and Q4, and seasonal repairs and supplies. And then we have our asset management, which is, we're still awaiting our grant confirmation for that, but we're very close. I think we're within 100, what's the word?
Applications.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That word was just right there on the tip of my tongue. So we're very close to knowing if we're going to move forward with that grant or if that money is going to come from gas tax. We originally budgeted that from gas tax, and we are hoping to use a different grant instead. So that is still outstanding, and we hope to start that project in the fall. And there are multiple small projects as well that will happen in the fall. The offset of the deposit on the loader is also seen on the expenses side. And then those projects that are still outstanding are seen on the expenses side as well. The soccer field, the skills park, the farm roadies, and Pebble Creek recovery. And then we have our, so our public works washroom and our public works roof repair are almost completed of our projects. The public works washroom is in a deficit currently, but is almost complete. And the public works roof repair is slightly over budget as well. It looks like it can be compensated within the budget, within some of the maintenance and servicing that we have remaining in the budget. We do obviously still have outstanding projects in capital and otherwise that will flow through in Q3, Q4, and possibly into 2022. Moving into transit, the transit we have our contributions for up to June, so Q1 and Q2. However, the AOA was still in discussion at the last council meeting, so we have not posted any invoices from transit after March 31st. So this is just the operating contract up to March 31st. I believe that's pretty close to being ready to post. And recreation is reviewed under the PBIS committee at the SLRD. And there'll also be a report from Management of Recreation coming up to talk about projects. If we can move to the Water Department, we can see that there are annual revenues and expenditures posted in this department. And then we have other items that are posted in the next quarter, such as penalties. We also have seen, obviously, a large increase in our water use, and that is reflected in the water purchases that we make for the industrial park area, that we are already hitting our annual budgeted amount for this, but this will be offset in revenues collected. We also have a project outstanding. We have a water rate study that we have to start in Q3 or Q4, and ongoing large projects such as the SCADA upgrade, the genset, the water treatment, and other small equipment that will be done in Q3 and Q4. In the sewer system or sewer department, we have, again, annual revenues and expenditures due to, obviously, the annual utility rate that goes out with taxes. And we have an industrial park generator project that's still to be completed on this department. And then with our airport, we are seeing a dip in our commercial revenue due to COVID. And there's also, that also has a seasonal component. So we may see some revenues come in Q3 or Q4, especially as we open up a little bit more. And then we have additional annual expenditures here, such as insurance. All right, do we have any questions?
Any questions? That's got it.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for the report, Ms. Martin. Just two questions. First of all, under legislative, I thought we had discussed putting some money in there from the COVID recovery grant for computer purchases.
I don't have that in the budget, but it is definitely something that would be applicable to the COVID grant. Should council direct that?
Okay, because I know one time, I think we talked about $7,000 because I know myself had computer issues, not just being hacked, but computer itself. And I know the mayor mentioned he was having some trouble. So I'm just wondering if some funds could be allocated to that in case we have to get something new. So that was the first question. The second question, industrial park water, you said that the consumption is pretty high. How close are we to meeting our needs from Lillooet Nation? Are we going to exceed that this year, or is there going to be a problem with that at all?
I'll leave that with CEO Gilmore and Public Works Manager Tom Chima. I think he would have a better hold on that. From a financial point of view, we are at 100% of our expected expenditure rather than 50. So we're seeing double the use right now.
If I can make a comment, we actually have exceeded our consumption, our annual consumption, or our quarterly. We're starting to exceed quarterly consumptions and what we have up for our agreement. We're over that. So we're working with Lillooet right now. Public Works is.
And is that, if I might, I know that's maybe under Mr. Seaman's report, but is that due to new construction out there and new people moving in, or is it just because of the heat?
That is something we're working through analyzing at this time. We started having conversations about that last week. So it's very sort of early conversations right now that we need to try and get to the bottom of.
Good, that's great, because we certainly don't want to be cut off out there at this point in time with 5 months left of the year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing no further questions, could I get a motion to receive the second quarter financial update? Councilor Craddock, second by Councilor Noble. Discussion. Opposed. Motion carries. And I think, I'm just looking ahead, we don't see Ms. Martin later in this agenda, do we? So let me take the opportunity, Lena.
To embarrass me again.
No, I won't embarrass you. I just want to say a collective thanks to you. You put in a lot of good years for us, and you made, well, you almost made the numbers sound interesting at times, which is a real feat. More important than that, the clarity with which you report on the numbers and the way you brought information back to council has been second to none when it comes to keeping us informed and making sure that we understood everything that's been put in front of us. So a real skill on your behalf, and a huge pile of gratitude from us for that. And we will miss you, and we wish you all the best. And you're going to need to come up and visit us at some point.
Definitely. Definitely.
Best of luck, Lena. Thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you so much. And thank
Thank you,
you,
Lena.
Mayor and Council. I really enjoyed my time. And I especially enjoyed coming to the table and having conversations with all of you, even the difficult ones. I learned a lot, and I really appreciated all the time we had together.
Thank you.
All the best of luck.
Did you mean the difficult counselors or the difficult conversation?
Difficult conversation.
Oh, okay. Just me.
There's never difficult counselors.
Anyway, really sincere, really big thanks, Lena. You take care.
She's gone. Thank you, Lena.
She's halfway out of town by now. We're going to wait for Ms. Pedrini. I believe we're on to development services next. Good morning, Ms. Pedrini. Thank you for joining us. Whenever you're settled in, we're ready to hear the second quarter report from development services.
Great, thank you. So the purpose of the report, obviously, is to inform council of the activities of the Development Services Department for the second quarter of 2021. So I'll give you an overview of the building division first. And we have been quite busy, as the numbers will indicate. So in the second quarter, between April and June 2021, 94 permits were issued. This compares to 19 for the same second quarter in 2020. So about a 500% increase in that volume. And the value of construction totaled 35,266,523, with a total of permit fees of 285,253 collected. In terms of development cost charges collected in the second quarter, there was a total of 216,450, and this compares to zero that was collected in the second quarter of 2020. In terms of our planning division for our current development applications, as usual, I've noted any new information to the second quarter in bold font. So we've got 3 development permits that are currently in-house and in process, or sorry, excuse me, the first one, Harmony Reach, the combined commercial residential development, is actually on hold pending receipt of a development variance permit that is required for variances to road standards. We still haven't received that. And in terms of the multifamily building that will feature dedicated rental apartments at 1422 to 1430 Portage Road, which is known as The Aspect, that development permit is in process, has been seen by the Advisory Design Review Commission. And now we are just in the process of collecting all the referral agency comments and coordinating that communication to the applicant. Hopefully that'll come forward to council soon. In terms of the development permit for 7454 Prospect Street, that's a development known as the Tanquil Building for a mixed-use building. This is between Expedition Station and the oh goodness.
Elementary school.
Napa. No, Napa building.
The auto parts store, sorry. I have these lapses in memory. That development permit is also in process. And again, it's been to the Advisory Design Committee. Comments have been communicated to the applicants, and they are working on those before it is brought forward to council for consideration of approval. We worked on 2 minor development permits in the second quarter, and they were both for Sunstone. both minor development permits because they are lot grading, environmental protection permits. And I've noted the dates they were received in the report. In terms of development variance permits, the application that was received for 7665 Cerulean Drive for a retaining wall variance, that one has been now abandoned by the applicant. And they have chosen to comply with the zoning bylaw by making changes to the retaining wall. And they have been issued a retaining wall permit by the building department. For 7661 Cerulean Drive, a very similar application for a retaining wall variance. That one was referred back to staff on April 13th, 2021 by council, and the applicants are still making amendments and we have not heard from them. So we expect that we will have something coming forward, or they may also choose to abandon the application and comply with the bylaw as is. The development variance permit for 1368 Fernwood, this was for road and utility variances. Council authorized that one for issuance on April 27th, 2021. So the applicants would now be working on their requirements for their subdivision application. And a more recent development variance permit that was received in the second quarter has been authorized for issuance by council earlier this month. And that was for Hillside Road variances. All right, so in terms of official community plan and rezoning applications, we have two in-house at this point. We have the K-12 French school that is seeking an official community plan amendment and rezoning to develop a school on the land that was scheduled to have Tayada Phase 2. And those bylaws received first and second reading in the second quarter on June the 1st. And as council recalls, we also have rescheduled the public hearing to September 21st. Another application for official community plan amendment and rezoning was received March 3rd, and that was for the Nkukma Benchlands Neighborhood Concept Plan submission. And I do have a report on that item next. But yeah, so in the second quarter, the application was in process. Okay, in terms of subdivision applications, we've got, what do we have here? 5 in process. So the 1368 Fernwood, which I've already referred to, that's the one that received the development variance permit. So that 4-lot subdivision is in process. 1400 Oak Street, this would be the application to do a lot split to split the residential portion of their lot from the main school lot for the secondary school. Their TAL, or tentative approval letter, expired in the second quarter. They have been advised of this and we haven't heard from them. So we're just on hold waiting for them to respond. The Sunstone Phase 2 subdivision continues to be in process, as well as 1929 Stonecutter Place, which is the Village of Pemberton's industrial park lot. And we also issued a tentative approval letter for Sunstone Phase 1C, which will see the creation of 14 fee simple lots and plus a remainder. That is at the extension of Cerulean Drive. And then we have a whole host of site alteration permits. I won't go through them all, but you can see that we have been busy issuing site alteration permits. So we thank the community for contacting us and seeking those approvals before they make alterations to their properties. And we also have 3 Board of Variance applications that were received in the second quarter. One was for a retaining wall height variance on Sugarloaf Place. That one was granted on May the 26th. And we have 2 applications for a single development that are coming forward to the Board of Variance tomorrow evening. And those again are for retaining wall height variances. And they're smaller variance requests. The first one, 7508, is for a relaxation of 0.66 meters. So they're looking to allow a retaining wall of 1.86 meters rather than 1.2. And the second property, 7510, are looking for a similar variance from 1.2 meters to 2.04 meters. And as I mentioned, those two properties are being developed together. One will have the principal residence and the other will just be open space for the enjoyment of its owners. All right, so we have been busy in current planning, and unfortunately with the loss of our planner, we haven't had the ability to make a lot of progress on some of our long-range planning projects. So the Affordable Housing Action Plan, the work program, is still in process. I can report that I have been in touch with the Lions, and I have a meeting coming up in August, next week, July 29th, with the Lions and a development consultant that will hopefully help them facilitate an application to receive some pre-development funding from BC Housing so that they can help fund the necessary feasibility studies in order to make an application to the BC Housing Community Housing Fund when they announce their next funding deadline. In terms of the Climate Action Plan, that project is on hold until I transition into my new role as official community planner on September 1st. And so at that time, it'll be the first project that I will take on in full time and hopefully get that in front of council to see a draft before it goes out to the community. I'm really hoping by September 21st. We have a zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment that was started by Joanna Reese and unfortunately has to have been put on hold until our new planner is hired. So you can look forward to that bylaw coming forward in the next month or two. And the development cost charge bylaw review also continues in process. Our contract planner, Cameron Chalmers, will be helping us out with that one. And he has been quite busy with current planning applications. So again, when things level off a bit, he'll be able to tackle that one. As well, obviously the official community plan review is on hold until September 1st, and then I will be taking that on full throttle after that. And our building bylaw update is in the second quarter, was in process and continues. It will be brought forward to council on September 21st. So that is it for my second quarter update, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you for the report, Ms. Pedrini. You guys have been a little busy. I have a quick question on the climate action plan.
Yes.
I know it's in several other reports on today's agenda that we deferred the single-use item regulation till there was some more information from the provincial and federal governments. There has since been some decisions. Victoria has adopted a new one. So there has been a lot of movement on single use. Is that going to get captured as part of the climate action plan?
Well, one of the 6 big actions that we're looking for is closing the loop on waste. So I would say it is captured. We might not specify, or it may come out as an action under that section of the climate action plan.
Okay, because I mean, that, again, understandably, we put it on hold and mostly due to uncertainty in terms of, there was court cases and what was allowed, and we wanted to wait and see what the feds and others sort of work through. But like I say, we've gotten to that point. So I would very much like to see that work picked up and hopefully captured as part of the climate plan. I feel like collectively, we've all taken some major steps backwards in the last 18 months when it comes to single-use items and waste that's going into our landfill as a result of the pandemic. So I think it would be very timely to capture that within the climate action plan.
I don't see why it couldn't be. So yes, thank you. And I'll make sure that we do touch on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Craddock.
Thanks very much, Member Richmond. Through to Ms. Pedrini, the final 3 items on page 79 to do with the variance board. I'm sure the variance board is aware of where council stands on this and that people that have come before us have been turned down. And I'm curious when they meet, if they're aware of those actions by council.
I can advise that all 3 members of our Board of Variance are new. They were appointed and have begun in 2021, excuse me. I can also advise that the Board of Variance is an independent tribunal, and it is they do have the authority to make decisions based on the information that is put forward to them in the staff reports. So if they have been keeping up to date with where council has been landing on development variance permits, then they would be aware, but they are an independent tribunal, and we actually don't even provide them with a staff recommendation. We put the information and they make the decision.
No, I understand that completely. I guess I don't want to get into a situation where we may end up in a lawsuit because the variance board is approving things that council previously has not. And I don't want to have that as a reason to come back. And when I look at what people are looking for, it's over and above what council has approved. So I know that we're not supposed to be a part of the variance board. It's independent, but I hope in our community we don't end up with 2 different levels of support for different retaining walls.
Well, I can assure you that no application that council has refused is now being seen by the Board of Variance. So these are applications that typically the route is to go to the Board of Variance first. And if they either decide to not approve a variance, or if they feel the variance is outside of their scope or their mandate, then it would come forward to council as a development variance permit. It's very rare that it would come to council first and then be seen by the Board of Variance, but it can happen.
Okay, and in future, do we get copies of the minutes of those meetings?
The minutes of those meetings are available on our website. Yeah.
Okay, and in future, if council wanted to see those, we could just ask yourself to present them to us. Then I would like to ask for those then in the future. Thank you very much. And great report. Thank you for this. And I guess it might be the second last time we'll see you in this position too, right?
That's probably correct. Yeah, I will be at the August 31st meeting if there is development services items that I'll be presenting, but yeah.
All the best in your new position.
Thank you.
And I would also just remind us that the variance board is a mandate, and the whole reason for being is to look at development variance permits on a case-by-case basis.
For hardship versus only.
I'm sorry,
Correct.
I'm sorry, I was still speaking. They're to look at it on a case-by-case basis and look at all the conditions. And as Ms. Pedrini said, if they feel it's outside their scope, then they refer it to council. Go ahead, Ms. Gilmore.
I'm just trying to be able to deliver on Councillor Craddock's request. So would it be better if we sent the link for where these minutes can be found and you can have a look at them? Because typically, well, they can't be on an agenda of ours because they're completely separate. That might be the best way for you to keep up to date on them. Would that help?
That would be wonderful. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that going forward, when we make decisions in council, that we're not completely opposite ends of the spectrum. So yes, thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I'll just point out as well, the Board of Variance meetings are open to the public, and as councillors, you're welcome to attend and observe the proceedings.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive the Development Services second quarter report for 2021? Moved by Councillor Zach, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Virginie. Oh, you're still with us. You're not going anywhere. We're here to talk about the OCP amendment with regards to early and ongoing consultation on the benchlands development. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so as mentioned, the purpose of this report is for council to consider early and ongoing consultation requirements for the proposed Nkukuma Benchlands Official Community Plan Amendment application. And this is pursuant to Section 475 of the Local Government Act. So the village received an application for an official community plan amendment on March 18th, 2021 from Shkinkanam Limited Partnership. I did want to clarify that there's an error in the report. So the Shkinkanam Limited Partnership is a partnership between the Lillooet Business Group and Pemberton Benchlands Development Corp, not the Bethel Land Corporation as stated. So if the minutes could reflect that change, that would be much appreciated. So the current official community plan policy framework covers approximately 60 hectares, but due to site limitations and jurisdictional issues, only 37 hectares of the subject property will be subject to the rezoning application. So there is a map of the area shown as figure 1. So the outlined area in bold red is the area that will be subject to the, let me just hang on, let me make sure I got this right. Will be subject to the official community plan amendment, and the area that is shown, it's very hard to see on this map, but there's a light pink tint to it, is the subject of the rezoning application. So an official community plan amendment of this nature will necessarily involve a substantial amount of consultation with agencies, stakeholders, and the public. So the purpose of this report is to satisfy the Local Government Act requirement that council identify opportunities for early and ongoing consultation on the proposed OCP amendment. So we're not here to talk about the specifics or details of the application at this point. That will be forthcoming, but only to decide on which stakeholders and how the public will be consulted. So I have put forward a list of referral agencies that the official community plan amendment will be referred to. And I would like to add one to the list, and that is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, as they are a holder of a statutory right-of-way through the property. So I'd like to add that to the list, and as well as if the minutes could reflect that in the resolution. As well, we would like to recommend that the public be given at least a minimum of 2 additional public open houses before the official community plan amending bylaws are introduced to council. So pre-application public consultation did take place in March of 2020. This was very early on, and that was actually just around the start of the COVID pandemic. So the results of these sessions will be presented to council later in the process. So as mentioned, the purpose of this report is to provide direction to council with respect to early and ongoing consultation. So I have put forward a recommendation that council has considered their obligations under Section 475, and that they request that the applicants organize, advertise, and host at least 2 public information meetings prior to consideration of the first reading of the forthcoming official community plan amending bylaw, and that council has considered their obligations under the Local Government Act and direct staff to consult with the following organizations: the Lillooet Nation, the SLRD, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, the Ministry of Environment, Contaminated Sites Branch, Ministry of Forest, Lands and Natural Resources, Archaeological Branch, Vancouver Coastal Health, the Sea to Sky School District number 48, the School District number 93, Pemberton Valley Diking District, Pemberton Valley Trails Association, Pemberton Off-Road Cycling Association, the Pemberton and District Chamber of Commerce, BC Hydro, TELUS, Shaw Communications, as well as CBC. So that is your staff recommendation.
Thank you very much for that report. Has Pemberton Wildlife Association been considered as a referral group on that list?
No, but we're happy to add them.
I feel that they would be appropriate on that list. Questions for Ms. Pedrini? Councillor Zach, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Pedrini. Just a quick question in regards to your list of groups to be contacted and consulted with. There's the school districts, 93 and 48. And what I'm curious about is within their consultation, if they try to take numbers, how many families will be moving into these houses, and if their consideration would be whether they need to start expanding the schools. With Pemberton being a family-friendly town as it is, I know lots of people want to move here with their kids, and I'm wondering if that's part of the consultation process, if the school district looks at the numbers of kids that will be coming into the schools and whether or not they have to maybe start expanding the school or at portables, what have you.
Absolutely. That is one of probably the main reasons that we do include them in the list of stakeholders that we consult with. So they have that information well before the development occurs and can plan for their long range learning needs.
Thank you.
Ms. Virginia, as you mentioned, and it says in the report, we're not here to discuss all the details of the application or the development, sorry. Can you just tell, for council and anybody listening, what will be the opportunities for council to weigh in on things like affordability, diversity of housing, or density, parklands, all those sorts of affairs? Can you just tell us where in the process that fits?
Sure. So this is very early in the process. And so what we do after this council resolution is we do our referral process, and that we will take on this fall. And then when the bylaws come forward for first and second reading, that will be council's opportunity to learn more about the application, and typically staff touch on all of those topics in that first report.
Great. Any other questions for Ms. Pedrini? I got a couple more then. Is there, in terms of the referral group, should there be consideration with regards to, or is this somewhere else in the process, fire smarting and fire hazard, considering that we're moving up into the woods here, and looking at what's going on around the province? Should there be a referral group or other types of consideration when it comes to fire smarting that area?
Sure. So when we do our referral process, we refer to both external agencies as well as all of our internal departments, which includes the fire department. Mm-hmm. And now that we have staff that are heading up Fire Smart initiatives, I'm happy to also send them a separate referral, and they will have an opportunity to comment. Maybe CAO Gilmore has it.
Oh, I have a question for you. I just wondered, at future stages, I think through there is a requirement to engage in wildfire interface. Do you want to talk a little bit about when that requirement would take place and what we would require?
Yeah, so when we look at amending our official community plan for this area, we also look at designating the area for development permit areas. So one of which is environmental protection, and one is land constraints, which includes looking at wildland hazards. So if the area is designated a development permit area before the applicants, after rezoning and before an applicant can achieve a building permit, they would have to go through a development permit process. And at that stage is when we would ask for a professionally prepared wildfire management plan. And we would have to sign off on that before building permits could be issued.
So that consideration is better placed at that stage, or should it be included in it as part of our referral groups as well?
I think it doesn't hurt to do both.
I'd like to see it included in the list.
Sure.
And then one last question. I know this is developer-led consultation. at this point. You know, when we do public hearings and that sort of thing, that's done by us, but this is developer led and therefore it's up to them. But I just wonder if there's information or any way we can put some requirements on the consultation. I just want to make sure if we're doing 2 or more even, or they are doing 2 or more public consultation sessions, I would like to see some really, really robust advertising for the whole community. This is a major development that's going to impact the whole community in many different ways. And certainly the folks that live up on the benchlands currently. And so I just want to make sure that the advertising is not simply, you know, one Facebook ad and something at peak, that there's some really strong advertising so that people have the opportunity to be part of this consultation.
Excuse me, yes. To answer that, Mayor Richmond, staff can provide the applicants with some criteria of how the consultation should take place and how they should advertise, so we can ensure that they get that message. And I can also advise that the applicant is on the line right now and is hearing everything council is saying. So, but we'll be sure to pass that message along.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? If not, the motion, sorry, I just lost my page. The recommendation is, let's go here. The council requests the applicant to organize, advertise, and host at least 2 public information meetings. That council has considered the obligations under section 475, and the council within that has suggested the referral groups as listed, with the addition of CBC, Pemberton Wildlife Association, and wildfire management staff. Moved by Councillor Caddick, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Do you have a comment, Ms. Virginie?
I was just going to recommend that you also pass a resolution with respect to your desire to see robust advertising.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion that the applicants be advised the council would like to see a thorough and robust advertising done for the public consultation sessions. Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Anything further on that? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Pedrini. Appreciate it. Enjoy your afternoon.
Have a great.
We will.
I
How's
think
everybody?
that was supposed to be holiday season or summer.
It's a short one. Is Mr. Chima with us? We get to keep carrying on. Everybody's all good. We've been at this over 2 hours now. Thumbs up. Good. Okay. So we're on to operations then. Mr. Chima is going to join us. Good morning,
Good
Mr.
morning,
Chima.
Council.
Welcome back and welcome to the meeting. Good to see you. When you're ready, we're going to pass it over to you for the operations department second quarter report.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. I'm here to present the second quarter operations progress report. So as usual, this is just to update council on the ongoing activities in the operations department. So to start, just wanted to mention that we did have a bit of a slow start with the parks crew. We were a bit behind trying to keep up, mainly with the spring cleanup related to the downtown, which was our first year maintaining that, as well as the new green spaces in Sunstone development. We did, however, hire new laborers in in July, which helped us immensely, and I do feel that we've caught up and that town is looking great. Obviously, one of the bigger news items, and probably you're well aware of, at the end of the second quarter, the high temperatures that we saw, which resulted in a high water event. Luckily, there wasn't significant damage to any municipal infrastructure or residents' properties, but that was obviously keeping the operations team very busy doing the sandbagging stations, as well as coordinating road closures and etc. But perhaps the less talked about item, and it did come up earlier in your council meeting today, was along with the high temperatures, we did see some rather staggering high water usage throughout the town. That's the drinking water. So although the rivers receded and did not cause any significant damage, we did escalate our water restrictions to level 3 on June 28th, which is specifying that residents can only water their lawns 1 day per week on a designated day. Now, despite these restrictions, the daily usage rates have been shattering our records from past years. We're seeing some days 20% higher than our previous maximum ever used. So obviously we do have some growth, but I think this is largely due to watering and irrigation. This type of usage is putting enormous stress on critical village infrastructure. And I know one common misconception that people say to me all the time is, well, we're surrounded by water. And in fact, the highest usage day was the day that we evacuated some residents from town, and people are saying, well, there's water coming into my house. Why do we not have enough water to water our lawns? And unfortunately, we can't drink that water. As council, I'm sure you're aware, our water comes from groundwater in our wells, and we're limited in capacity mainly by the rate at which the pumps can pump, as well as our storage capacity in the reservoirs. On that day, we ran the pumps for 24 hours. So essentially, if there was any use that would take, for example, a fire that was high usage, or if there was a leak, or if there was something that took away from that use, we would not be able to keep up with the use in town, and people would not have water at their taps. So I just really wanted to stress the importance of this messaging for the community as well. Obviously, we're still in level 3 water restrictions, and we're doing our best to communicate with the public and enforce the water restrictions on irrigation. We're also looking into we have zone meters. We're trying to look into which areas might be the heavy users. We're looking into leaks, and actually, if there's time, I have some statistics I'd be happy to pull up at the end of my report to show you, based on what we see, our base usage is the same. It's only now in the summer that we're seeing these staggering numbers. So I don't think we can attribute it to any leaks. So that's the sort of main messaging from my report. On top of that, we did have several other projects ongoing. I'll try and rhyme them off quickly because, as I said, I wouldn't mind showing you guys some more stats on our water usage at the end of this. But yeah, in public works, obviously the regular operation and inspection and maintenance of all of our sanitary lift stations, wastewater treatment plant, water conditioning plant, the well house, pumping stations. We did some airport brushing. The trees around the fence of the airport were getting pretty large and causing damage to the fence. So that's completed. Public Works building staff washroom is completed. That's been constructed. So the staff are happy to actually have a bathroom that they can use. Fernwood water service pipe leak repair. I'm only mentioning this because we have had a few water main repairs, and I think it just demonstrates sort of the fragility of our water system. The wellhouse standby generator, in the second quarter, we did the initial site preparations. You may have seen that the actual generator is there now, being installed in the third quarter, but we haven't yet commissioned it. There was actually a faulty part from the supplier, so we're just waiting on that to be corrected. The coordination of Portage Road water main repair. Now, this is just in front of the development that was formerly known as Crestline. We actually I coordinated with the developer to perform this repair because we did find that it caused some vulnerability in our system. So that's been fixed, and we worked well with the developer to get that done. The SLRD transfer station site service connections, as part of that new lot subdivision, we had to service the lot so that the subdivision, each lot would be serviced, and Public Works did that. I'm really proud of the team for taking that on. The development engineering design review, that's standard. Our ongoing new service connection inspections, which we've seen a lot of with all the new builds as well. We purchased a new excavator and loader. Thank you to council and mayor for approving that amendment. we're very excited now that we have the excavator. We've already been putting it to use in our ditching work that's ongoing as we speak. Walnut lift station pump replacement. We've had some trouble with that one, and I'm mentioning it so that you guys can see it now, because expect something in the budget next year to come up for that. And we completed our Ridge Reservoir cleaning, which was quite cool. Unfortunately, we can't get into that tank. So we actually hired a contractor that they dive into the tank, and they have fully sanitized equipment that they're actually able to clean the reservoir from within while it's full of water. So it was quite an interesting operation, and it was pretty amazing to see how they worked and all their equipment. In parks, we had our ongoing garbage collection, public receptacles, daily sanitization of public toilets. We have scaled back our toilet cleaning slightly. We're still doing it every day, but just to focus on some of the parks operations. Spring parks cleanup, as I mentioned, that was quite an undertaking with some of the new stuff that we took on, but I'm pretty happy with the crew, and everyone chipped in to get caught up there. Dundalk Park site preparations. This is a big one, obviously, with soccer field number 2 well underway, as well as the Bike Skills Park site preparations. We did put out the Bike Skills Park request for proposals, and we've issued a notice of award, as was mentioned earlier in this meeting. So we're really excited to get that project rolling. They'll start some preliminary works this fall, but mainly the work will be done next year. And we added some sand to 1 Mile Lake Swimming Beach, which I've seen some pretty impressive sand castles out there the last couple of weeks. So nice to see the kids making use of it. Of course, it's not as nice and smooth as when we laid it all out now, but watch your ankles when you're walking there. Kids tend to dig some pretty big holes. So I mentioned Sunstone Parks and Green Spain's maintenance takeover, so that took some coordination, and we're still trying to hit our rhythm there, but I feel pretty good about it now. And the completion of the leash-free dog park fencing installation. So that's sort of a summary of all of our tasks from the second quarter. Now, if you'll allow me to just share my screen, I'd really like to talk a little bit more about the water usage. Is that okay? Great. Okay. Can you all see this? Yes.
We see
Great.
your report.
Oh,
We don't see it. If you're looking for a graph or something, that's not showing.
okay. Pardon me.
We've got a snip tool and
Okay, sorry. Here we go. You should see a table now, maximum daily demand.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, perfect. So I just wanted to highlight, our average daily demand. This number is from 2020, is higher than the Canadian average. So we're sitting at 618 liters per person per capita. Now compared to Canada, residential users should be about 290 liters, but everything combined in Canada is about 500 liters per person per capita. So we're already a bit high on our average demand, but this number here shown in red, 1,300 liters, that was our single day June 29th, was the hottest day there of the year. But just to show that that's double our average use, and also up to 5 times higher than the average Canadian per capita usage. So that's pretty staggering. And just to compare, I mean, Squamish, they've been working really hard at reducing their usage. They're considering themselves in alarmingly high rates, and we're almost double them. So just to put that in perspective. I just wanted to share this graph. So it might look a little bit confusing, but I'll go through it with you here. Highlighted, I'm showing you 2021's usage. If you look in green, that's the 2020 daily usage, and in purple is the 2019 daily usage. So just to flip back to this year, you can see how much higher we are already. Usually, I think towards August is when we start to see the higher usage. So obviously with this hot weather we've been having, that's contributed largely to this, but it is pretty shocking to see how much more we are using. And then just for interest's sake, I included the temperatures, the maximum daily temperatures, so you can see the relation. So this red being 2021's temperatures, and then the yellow and maroon colors being the previous years. So definitely there's a direct correlation between the temperatures we're seeing and the water usage, which is again why I would not consider this to be a leak or something that we're not accounting for. I think it's entirely the temperatures and the heat. And my theory is, well, of course, there's irrigation that's using a lot of it, but also we do suspect that some people might have old style cooling units, which actually use tap water and run through a coil and is blown through to help cool their homes. So this is something that we're going to have to figure out and how to address this. But just to show you again, these lines at the bottom, the orange one is where our pace is right now for the average in 2020. And this green one is the 2020 average, which is almost dead on what 2019 and 2018 were. So we sort of sit just under 2,000 cubic meters per day on average. And right now we're well above that. And, you know, I just for interest's sake, I ran the numbers for 2020 and 2019 up to July 27th to know. And the average, because we're about midway through the year, the average is about where it would be for the whole year. So if this trend continues, yeah, we're going to see a significant jump this year. Now, just to give you some stats, I just wanted to mention that day we used 4,200,000 liters of water on June 29th. At that rate, for 50 days, we would be able to fill 1 Mile Lake. I've made some pretty big assumptions there, so don't quote my scientific method, but yeah, assuming that the lake is on average 2-3 meters deep, that was the volume that we use. So it's pretty shocking to think about. Now, I thought I'd also mention, just for people wondering, well, what can we do about it? The average household can waste up to 680 liters per week just in household leaks. That's equivalent to running 300 loads of laundry. So the average household can essentially save 300 loads of laundry in a week by fixing minor leaks and repairs. Also, letting a faucet run, even for 5 minutes while doing your dishes, brushing your teeth, shaving, that can be up to 40 liters per time. You know, in a year, that would be 1,130 water coolers of water savings that you could have by just shutting the water off while you're brushing your teeth, or 3 water coolers per day. So if you think about how many of these you might drink in a day, that's a fair bit of water. More specific example, a leaking toilet valve, like the flapper valve that helps when you flush the toilet. A leaking toilet valve can contribute to 4,000 liters a month. So that's equivalent to 14 bathtubs of water in a month. Then, as I said, I think a lot of our issues are around outdoor water use, and that's common, as I showed you in the maximum daily values. The outdoor water use can account to up to 30 to 60% of total households' water. The average size lawn in Pemberton, if it's watered for 20 minutes a day for 7 days, every single day, that's equivalent to running your shower for 4 days continuously. Or to look at another way, 800 showers, 7-minute showers. That's a year's worth of showers if you're taking 2 showers a day. So 1 week of watering your lawn 20 minutes a day is 800 showers equivalent. Last one, and this one took me a long time to make because it's, what are we at here? 760 toilet flushes. That's the loss just due to evaporation and wind with standard irrigation systems. So if you're watering your lawn, the average loss over the year from wind, runoff, and evaporation is equivalent to flushing the toilet 770 times. So that concludes my little graphics there. I just hope that I think you were probably all on board with how serious the situation is, but I hope that there's some public watching and we're hoping to try and put out some information to the public like this to just to show how serious it is. And just the final note on that, you know, I think we've all taken it for granted. You open the tap and there's water there. And, you know, like I said, you see water all around you, but people don't really comprehend the delicacy of this system and how important conservation is.
Thank you, Mr. Chima. Those are shocking numbers. When we were at the height of the heat, and by the way, it's supposed to get hotter again this week, not quite to what we saw, but it's still supposed to get hotter again and push 40. When we were at the height, were we still, and I recognize that our pumps were working 24 hours, which is a precarious situation. Were we able to deliver minimum fire flows at that point if there were a fire in town?
The fire flows technically would be there. The problem would be the capacity. So if everyone continued to use water, then at some point there wouldn't be storage capacity, because essentially the pumps would not be able to keep up to the flow that would be going out to the town and to fight the fire. So it would be a scary situation. We would probably have to shut some valves around town, shut people's water off so that we could continue to fight the fire. But you would be able to fight the fire, but as a compromise, you would have to shut off water supply to other areas of town.
And are we considering level 4 restrictions?
I think we're happy at level 3 right now. I mean, to be honest, I don't think that the restrictions are that effective at the moment. Unfortunately, Public Works is enforcing these restrictions right now without adequate bylaw enforcement. It's very challenging. And, you know, I think the key is the education piece. At the end of the day, if everyone was following level 3 restrictions, we would have plenty of water. But the reality is a lot of people are not. And so I don't see going up to level 4. It's just going to punish the people that actually are following the level 3 restrictions, because essentially it means no watering. And, you know, these are the people that are actually coming and getting their permits, or they're only watering on those days. And so, you know, what we really need to do is crack down on the people that are watering when they shouldn't be.
Like you say, with a lack of bylaw, we don't have that enforcement capacity. So we're pretty much relying on education and cooperation. I think that, you know, as part of that education, the message on the risks to fire is obviously a big one that would hopefully open people's eyes, as well as some of those stats that you just presented to us. And a reminder to people that brown grass goes green again when it rains. It's okay. Brown grass is not bad. It goes green again.
Yeah. And just to clarify, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to clarify a couple other misconceptions. You know, a lot of people have said, well, what about my vegetable garden? This is exempt from the bylaw. What about hand watering? Exempt from the bylaw. If you look at the bylaw, it's very reasonable on what you're allowed to do. And essentially it's just trying to prevent people from turning on the hose and running it for a couple hours. And, you know, even with watering, I mean, I told you the stats on 20 minutes of watering every day. They say that 20 minutes is more than enough. You know, the actual volume of water that you need to water your grass is quite minimal. And I think that the problem is these systems that people just turn on the hose and they don't realize that that's pouring valuable amenity just to be evaporated or run off the road. So.
I could tell by our grass in many areas that we've been using only what we needed. Our irrigation companies, especially through like strata properties and that, are they monitored, given this information so that they can turn down their, because I feel like irrigation systems are turned on in whatever April and they're turned off in October, and they're not necessarily managed as per the flows.
We have communicated with the stratas and all the known landscaping and irrigation companies in town. You know, as I said, without going around enforcing, I have seen actually the stratas are better in most cases, because it is just, you know, they usually have maintenance from time to time. Maybe the irrigation guy will come and check up on it. So I think it's largely the private residences, but even in the stratas, people can water themselves, you know, they put out the hose. So Yeah, we have communicated, but there's been talk also about fire smarting and the opposite fact that by not watering hedges or bushes that you're going to be more at risk. So it's a balancing act for sure. But as I say, if everyone's just reasonable about it and does their part, there wouldn't be a problem.
Further questions for Mr. Chima? Mr. Craddock, and then Councillor Zant, and then Councillor Antonelli.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Seaman. I appreciate the fact that yourself, Councillor Zant, and myself are leading by example by not shaving. So hopefully the amount of water we're saving for the community is exemplary. The question I have for you, I appreciate the charts and seeing the numbers. Do you have any charts at all that would show the amount of usage Pemberton North compared to the village and compared to the industrial park, which I hear is at 100% capacity?
I don't have any on the tip of my finger right now, but definitely as I mentioned, we are looking at the zones and our usage. So that's definitely something that if anything, the Pemberton North is the least difficult to quantify because we do have metering and we charge them according to that. I think our biggest challenge is in town where there are no water meters to know which neighborhoods are the worst. So yeah, in our analysis, we will have that, but I'm sorry, I don't have that available right at this moment.
No, that's great. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate your note about Pemberton North water system, that they're on meters. So that's easier to follow for sure, and the cost factor. So yeah, it would be nice in the future. I don't know even if, can it be broken down to neighborhoods at all, or is that really tough to do because we don't have meters on those areas?
We do have 5 zone meters, which were installed in an effort to try and manage water conservation. It's not necessarily broken down by neighborhoods. It sort of depends on the water network. It's a rather complex, we're looking at this right now. In fact, I have a meeting after this to go through. It is a rather complex calculation. So it's hard to narrow it down to specifically, like we couldn't say the Glen uses this neighborhood uses this, just based on the network. But yes, we'll be able to narrow it down to 5 zones, and knowing those zones, which users are in them, try and work from that. But mainly that's actually for leak detection, to know which mains are leaking. And as I stated earlier, I don't believe there to be significant leaks that are causing this high usage. I think it's purely the heat and people's irrigation and possibly cooling systems.
Thank you very much for that.
Zant, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Richard. Thanks for the report, Mr. Chima. I really appreciate all those details. You may have touched on, I can't recall exactly what you said about the stratas, but will the village be contacting the stratas to see where their sprinkler timings are set, whether it's, like you said, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, etc.?
We reached out to all the stratas. I believe we just sent a blanket email to say, please note that it's level 3 restrictions. These are the designated days. I don't believe we reached out individually and followed up on it. But as I mentioned, we also reached out to all the major irrigation companies in town, hoping that they would, take the responsibility of going and correcting those. So, but in part of our analysis, and if we do find that some stratas are using more, we may reach out directly.
Okay. And one more question, if I may, Mayor Richmond. In regards to the, I'll call it marketing, to the use of water within Pemberton. I like your presentation. It's really interesting to see the details with the bathtubs, dishwashers, and etc. How much of that, of your PowerPoint, are you going to put up on, say, the Facebook page or the Peak? Because I think, as you said it yourself, that if people at level 3 restrictions going to level 4 is not going to make a difference. But I'm wondering about the education piece and if the village will go further with more education. Because if we don't have anybody to enforce it, then we can at least try to educate people.
Absolutely, you've nailed it on the head, and that's what personally my focus is. I'm going to be working with our communications coordinator on that, and unfortunately we had planned on doing this even in April, putting out some communications similar to this in anticipation. You know, we knew that there's some new builds getting built and some big lawns and things like that. So, but with some of the EOCs and everything that have come up, we haven't been able to put together a comprehensive, but definitely that's, you know, that's my outlook, and that's why I put this together for council's sake. And you know, I have planned to continue. I'm not a communications person myself, but yeah, I kind of want to shove it down people's throats. Forgive my vulgar analogy there, but yeah, I do want to put it in people's faces. And
Sure.
And you know, we talked about signage, and we talked about ads. I mean, I did take out a couple larger ads than we normally do in the Peak, but not everybody reads the Peak, and not everybody checks the village Facebook page. So I think it's also, and you know, I've talked to fire chief, and I've talked to other people, just say, like, tell your members, tell your friends, tell your neighbors. I think we're getting there. People are aware, at least, of the restrictions. But as for the reasoning, that's the part that I really want to drive home. And as I said, a lot of people that I've spoken to are completely oblivious to it. Well, there's rivers here. Why is there a water problem? So yeah, I definitely think that education is the key piece.
I agree. And thank you for the information about the toilet tank valves. I think that's one thing that can be overlooked, where you just go and shake the valve and shake the handle and people carry on. But that's a really good one. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And to add to that, if I did read an interesting way that you can check if you have a leak, is to just put some food coloring in the back of the cistern of the toilet.
Yep.
And if you see any color come into the toilet bowl, that means that you've got a leak, without flushing, of course. Just leave it there. And
that's fantastic. Great. Thank you for that info.
Thank you. Councillor Antonelli.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about a particular spot. Maybe I've asked about this before, I can't recall. Between the community center and the main road, there's a strip of grass, and it's often saturated. Maybe not now, I haven't noticed in the last couple of weeks, but is that a leak, or it seems odd for it to be wet?
You mean in the ditch beside the road, or in the community center?
It's close to the Cottonwood Street, so it's not quite a ditch yet. It's a little bit of a depression, but it's definitely, you could, you know, certain times of the year your feet get soaked there when the remainder of the lawn is dry. And I've always wondered if that was a leak. I'm
not aware of any leaks there. I know that there's a couple low spots that tend to accumulate water, and it is quite surprising how little difference there needs to be in order for there to be a low spot. But yeah, I'm not aware of any leaks there. Obviously, any leaks that we are aware of, we try and address immediately. But you know, it could even be an irrigation leak. It could be something like that. But yes, I can follow up on it and see.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Councillor Noble, go ahead.
I was just wondering if the splash park is metered. Just for information, I'm not interested in shutting it down, but it would be a good thing to know how much the usage is.
Yes, it is. Yes, and that's going to be part of our analysis. We, you know, as you say, we struggled with that, especially in that heat. People need to cool down, and we talked about shutting it down. I think that they shortened the hours that it was running, but it's so hard because, yeah, I mean, I'd rather people go to the splash park than run their sprinklers to stay cool. So it is definitely something that, unfortunately, that is a big water waster.
Any questions? Councillor Caddick, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. Mr. Seema, I thought when we put in that water park, we had a reclamation on that so that we could reuse the water. Is that not the case?
That is not the case. I can't speak to what was discussed initially. I wasn't here at that time, but there's currently no water reclamation there.
We looked at that. Go ahead, Ms. Gilmore.
Yeah, we ran out of funds. The amount of money that it was going to cost to install that at the time wasn't available for the project.
I guess looking back, that money might have been well spent if we could have found it.
And
Yeah.
if I could just add to that, I did get a message there from our recreation manager, Christine Burns, that by shortening the hours, they did manage to cut back by 30%. So they've been monitoring that quite closely.
Great, thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, could I get a motion to receive Mr. Chima's report? Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Caddick. For discussion, Any opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Chima.
Thanks for having
A
me.
lot of work going on out there. Looks great out there.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay, moving on. Ms. Burns will be joining us for a rec update. There she is. Good morning, Ms. Burns. Thank you for joining us. When you're all set, we're ready to hear about the second quarter report for recreation services.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. May I just add that on the fabulous water presentation by the Manager of Development Services, or sorry, Manager of Operations, Tom Chima, we have reduced the water flow at the spray park by 30%, as well as all of our irrigation has been cut by 50%. And that occurred the end of June, when we recognized that water consumption was definitely an issue. So just to add a little update there. And we have maintained that. We haven't increased any of those things moving forward. And I apologize for not adding that information to my report in the first place. Spring, summer programming. My report is to discuss April 1st to June 30th and what has happened from a recreation perspective. We move forward in the spring under PHO guidelines as they were still in full effect, as well as there were still some significant orders in place in regards to how we could operate fitness programs. The one thing we did do this spring was we offered spring and summer programming at the same time and did registration for both on March 8th. What we discovered is that it took 2 staff to manage incoming phone calls on top of the approximately 1,100 emails I received from people who were registering online during that, from that 9 a.m. time slot. So we are preempting our registration day for fall winter with some additional staffing as a result of that. Spring saw great uptake in programming that we were able to offer. We did start the spring session with a new PHO order on March 25th that halted all fitness classes, as well as shifted to mask wearing being mandatory while individuals were working out in fitness centers. That order stayed in place until April 26th. So at that time, when we restarted fitness programs, we moved them outside for the spring, and then we have continued with modified fitness classes for the summer, just because it is typical for us to see a slowdown in participation. We saw consistent use of the fitness center, which was fantastic, as well as all of our children's programs were fully attended this spring. I think you would assume we offered as much as we possibly could under the circumstances, and everything was well received. Seniors programming continued with some online programs, and we did begin to start to see some uptake in activities for seniors after April 29th. Youth programming has been a whole other ball game. I think we've seen a huge decline in youth activity inside our facility as well as in our programs. So we will be working on a program to re-engage the youth, hopefully come fall. I think the orders and mask wearing and participation and lack of opportunities has definitely been an impact on the youth that's different than other demographics through the pandemic. We've seen a great uptake in summer programming in registration during the spring, And then we did continue to see great use of the fitness center and pass sales as well. We're pretty pleased that our 1 month and 3 month adult passes and senior and youth passes seem to be consistent with sales across the board. We didn't see a huge decline, so we're pretty pleased with that. So we are continuing to see regular use. Facility maintenance, we had park and playground inspections. The spray park did open on schedule May long weekend. Our water use was reduced by 30%, as I said, to meet the level 3 restrictions. Irrigation was reduced by 50% on June 27th as well. We installed a new security system. So 4K cameras were installed in June, and we had lighting installed at the entrance of the facility so that it's not as dark when you approach at 6 a.m. or in the evening when it's not sunny all day. I think the other thing to highlight is that the winter damage out at the Meadows it was a significant impact on use early spring, just because it was significant damage. However, the repairs were all successful, and we have seen great use out at the Meadows, as well as all of the other fields as well, once they were ready to be used in mid-April. Indoor facility use continued to be the same as it was all fall and winter under PHO restrictions. And we did see some increased use in March and April because we were allowed to welcome some groups and some training back into the facility. So we had a few more bookings inside the building, which was great. And then I think the highlight of the spring and the second quarter was we hosted 13 vaccination clinics in conjunction with Vancouver Coastal Health, which saw approximately 4,300 people aged 12 and older attend and receive their first and second doses of the vaccine. So we're pretty proud of the fact that that has gone so smoothly and continues to go super smoothly. Vancouver Coastal Health has been a great partner in how we've moved forward. The weekend of June 26th, we saw the Pemberton Community Center opened in the middle of, the middle of the evening to accommodate a reception center for evacuees due to the flooding possibilities in Pemberton, and it's remained as a reception center until June 30th, Tuesday, June 29th, when the order was rescinded. Parks and fields saw some uptake, obviously. If you recall in the first quarter report, we were working towards taking over the park use permits from the village office under recreation. So we are working at booking all of the outdoor spaces in our community on top of what the recreation department used to operate just under SLRD. So that has gone really smoothly. We had lots of toilets installed early on in outdoor spaces because of the warm spring that we saw. So we saw a need for porta potties to be installed out by the skate park. They went in a little early out at the Meadows, and they went in early out at the new Denduff Park as well. Continual maintenance of all of those spaces has occurred as well. And then there's been lots of contract renewals for outdoor spaces, including the Soaring Club, Paddle Barn Concession. I think it's really nice to see how vibrant and active the outdoor spaces are in the community. And then on May 25th began the provincial restart plan. So I think this might be what people are most interested in. Appendix A, which is page 98, 99 of the council package, outlines how we're moving forward in various areas. I think you heard from HR coordinator Emily White earlier, and the communicable disease plans and the transition from a COVID safety plan to communicable disease plans, which we've had to institute not just for staff. So thank you very much to Emily White for tackling that for staff. It helped guide how we moved forward for establishing one for how the facility receives public on a day-to-day basis. Step one didn't see much change for us, and that was from May 25th to June 14th. We were already doing everything that they allowed us to do through the restart plan. I think the big one is step two, and that was the timeline from June 15th to June 30th. That one didn't really impact us that much either, because it pretty much just reiterated what they said in step one. It was the beginning of step three that started on July 1st and was announced on, I believe it was Tuesday, June 29th. And that changes a lot of how we do business. But I think we are transitioning slow and steady, because much of the reintroduction in the restart plan requires us to increase our staffing capacities in the facility at this time. I think I've kind of covered off quarter two there. So if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that very thorough report. Go ahead, Councillor Antonelli.
Yeah, I see there's a lot of kids enjoying the summer programs with the contractors and through the community center. I think that's great. I hope in the future we can expand on that, because my understanding is a lot of them sell out really quite quickly. I was wondering if we have made any efforts to ensure that those places are reserved for Pemberton families, because I know there's some enrollment from outside of the community.
Yes, I think currently as it stands, registration is first come, first serve to a certain extent. We have been able to accommodate wait lists, and for the most part, through the addition of some additional programming. I think we worked really hard in conjunction with all of the other programs available in the community this year to ensure that there were 2 options per age categories being, you know, the early years, so 0 to 5, but really the 3 to 5 age group, and then school age being K to 7, so that there were at least 2 options every day of the summer. So far, we've seen a little bit of canceling for our early years programs because of a lack of registration, but we have been able to increase capacities where possible in our programs for sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Gilmore, you have something to add?
I just wanted to ask Councillor Antonelli, when you reference people from outside the communities, like exactly where, because all of Area C contributes. I'm not sure if you're referencing to, you know, sort of more southern residents or how, or who those individuals or groups are.
Oh, I just noticed some Whistler families coming up for the canoe camp, which is great. I mean, it's nice to mix and whatnot, but I know that Whistler does have, as part of their registration program, they restrict it to Whistler residents, and then later it opens up to people outside of the community. And I'm wondering if we need to do the same, because I know a lot of people use these programs as childcare when they're trying to work. So I just want to make sure that Pemberton families have, you know, first dibs on something that's really critical to, you know, making the whole family work.
Mm-hmm. I think that that's something we could definitely refer to the PVIS committee to have a conversation on. I know there's a bit of history, obviously, on why there are limitations or delays on when, in particular, Pemberton residents can register in Whistler. But if that's something, you know, we're seeing as an impact that Pemberton residents can't get access to booking these summer programs or any programs, you know, I think the conversation should at the very least be had.
I think it's a good conversation. I would entertain a motion to refer this conversation to the PVIS committee. Councillor Antonelli, if you'd like to make that.
Sure.
Seconder. Councillor Craddock, further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. More questions for Ms. Burns? Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Burns, for the report. Very well laid out, and I appreciate it. A number of people in town have expressed a desire to maybe look at pickleball again. And I know it was tried a number of years ago and unsuccessfully for numbers. I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity that might be put down on your list of things that might get people out to do recreation. It's supposedly the fastest growing sport in North America. And I know Whistler and Squamish have actually run out of places to run it. It's so popular. So I'd like to see us consider it in the future. I'd like to give it a try myself, actually. Thanks.
Happy, it's actually already on the list. We did attempt to offer in conjunction with Kirk Patterson a couple of tennis pickleball courses and some children's programs, but we didn't have any registration at the time. But pickleball is 100% on our radar, Councillor Craddock, and we're happy to pursue adding it to our repertoire programs.
Much appreciated. Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Couple quick ones, Ms. Burns. With regards to the fitness center, in your appendix, it shows that you will no longer need the gaps between groups. And so that should open up more registration space or space for people to work out. Is that happening now? Is that happening shortly? I feel like we from what I understood recently, we transitioned from the gap to a smaller gap. Are we going to remove that gap entirely and open? And I know you're closing for a bit to reorganize and put some new equipment in, but what's the plan with that?
Okay, so we were closed for fitness time slots last week. And that was due to the arrival of new fitness equipment. So we're just in the process of getting some pictures up and posts out around that. And what we've done is we've shortened the gap between time slots because we do still want to encourage individuals to turn around to a certain extent with their use of the space. Doesn't mean they can't go back to back, and we're accommodating individuals who are going back to back as individuals when we see that they are staying for the next set. But we're just in the process of discussing how to move forward for September with just making it open again. As I did state, some of this is dependent upon our staffing capabilities, which are a little short at this time.
Mm-hmm. No, totally recognize that. I know you're short staffed there. What the feedback I've heard is, why do we still need the gap? It's really inconvenient. It could open up more spaces if we remove the gap. And I guess, so I just want you to have that feedback as you're considering it. I know that people are a little bit frustrated with that and not being able to just roll right through. And so I'll just leave that with you. And then I guess my question would be, removing that gap, is that a staffing issue? Like I totally get that you guys are short staffed and you're trying to work with what you have, but in terms of the fitness center, is that actually impact staff if you remove the 15-minute gap?
It does. We do need to have someone who is at the desk all of the time if we have no gap. As it stands right now, we're managing internally with full-time staff and some casual. What we have done that is different is we have eliminated the Great Hall as a fitness space. So we're just working on getting some muscles into the building to get the last of the equipment there so we can have the whole Great Hall back for use. And we have increased capacity in upstairs, but we're doing it gradually because what we're finding is that because we had limited numbers due to PHO restrictions in those spaces, people got really used to only working out with a maximum of 9 other people in the space. And so what we're finding is people are like, whoa, 12 people up there was a lot of people. And so we're just kind of increasing it gradually and slowly so that the community gets used to everyone being back up there. I think you'll find that my colleagues in other recreation departments are doing a variety of things as well. And we're on the curve of being a little more progressive with welcoming people back in on a more consistent basis than other spaces. Meadow Park is still, they're still pretty limited as far as how they're managing things there, and they're fully staffed. So it is a bit of a challenge from that perspective. But we're also not full. So it's pretty rare for a time slot to be full right now. So we have like 2 time slots a day where we are full, 6 a.m. and I think somewhere around 6 to 7 p.m. Or between 5:30 and 6 p.m. With shortening the time slots though, we have been able to add 2 additional time slots a day. So we're just trying to manage it based on what we're seeing. We did stop, we were at the beginning of July open for a 1 p.m. time slot, and we were regularly seeing 1 person. So we stopped doing that and we pushed it to a 2 p.m. start. And yesterday we had 5 people in there at 2 p.m., which was great. So we're just kind of going with where we're at and what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. But by no means do we want to, hopefully we're not deterring anyone. We're still also just starting to get members of the community back into the building. So people are still really hesitant to come back to a public space to work out. So we've got some work to do.
You know, like you say, people's comfort levels are different.
Yeah.
I've noticed in other aspects, you know, to just kick open the doors and fill it up, it's not comfortable. But I guess, and it sounds like you're all over it, so I won't beat it to death. I've just heard frustrations about, well, if I want to book 2 hours, I can't book 2 in a row, or I got to leave for an hour and come back, or an hour and a half. And so that, and again, I don't expect you to explain it all. I'm just passing on some of the feedback I've heard that with regards to the fitness center, you know, so one of the reasons people weren't booking at certain times is because they could get from 9 to 10, but they couldn't get their second hour till 11:30 or whatever. And so there was a little bit of that, but it sounds like you're all over it. I just wanted to pass that along. One more quick question for you. Has there been contact with SD48 with regards to drop-in services in their facilities?
I have reached out to SD48 multiple times. I am still waiting to hear back from them, but it is 100% on the radar. We are hopeful that we'll be back in Pemberton Secondary for the winter. So, you know, sometime after Thanksgiving, it would be when we would normally start indoor drop-in sports in both facilities, actually. So super hopeful that I hear from Ian really quickly.
I am too, because I'm hearing a lot of people that are very keen to get back in there. I know a few myself, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
We're keen to get you back in.
What's that?
We're keen to get you back in.
I have a key.
I know.
I haven't
I
used it
know.
yet, but I have a key. Any further questions for Ms. Burns? Seeing none, can I please get a motion to receive the second quarter recreation report? Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Burns.
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Before we go any further, I need a resolution to extend the meeting beyond 3 hours, please. Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. And I'm also, so do we have time for, I know the chief has a meeting at 12:30. He's got time to carry on with this? Okay, we're going to get the chief on board right now then. And so we're on 9G Pemberton Fire Rescue second quarter report. There he is. Afternoon, Mr. Grossman. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to give my second quarter report. So I'll just get right into it and go through. So for the second quarter, we've responded to 95 incidents for the second quarter, and this is up considerably from 2020. And our call volumes are up. So as compared to the second quarter for 2020, for April, we had 25 calls. For 2021, we had 27 calls, so it was up a little bit. And then May and June were up considerably. As far as the next kind of graph table that I have, as you can see, May and June, we had more calls in the month than we had days in the month. So we were up considerably there as well. A lot of this in quick review has been, there's been a lot more medical calls over the last May and June compared to last year. Because last year after March 31st, they shut down medical calls for firefighters responding because of COVID. Of incidences at the end of June, 9 average number of responders, and total members, 9 members for the 18% of our members are responding to calls. One of the questions that was asked that I added to the report was these average number of firefighters that attended each response type over the 5-year period. This information is from NFPA standards. The standards like explain the number of members that are required to do each job as far as medical, motor vehicle, alarms. It's also stated by WorkSafe has requirements for minimum numbers when responding when people are in buildings. When we have an alarm call, for instance, if it's an alarm, what we do is we have one truck go out. The rest of the members are on standby in case that alarm turns out into something. So there's only one vehicle going out, checking out the alarm. If there's nothing there, then the other guys will stand down. So I just wanted to clarify that, as I had a couple of questions in the past just from the public asking about that. So that was that. Might have mixed up my pages, I'm not exactly sure. But as you can see, the number of incidences we had on the one chart per day, we've had a couple of days where, like on the average, we'll have 1 or 2 a day. We had a couple in June where we had 4 incidences and 5 incidences per day. So that brings the numbers up. You can also see incidents by type. On page 104 of your report, it shows that medical aid is 44%, fire related are 22%, motor vehicle are 18%, alarms are 7%, public service, where we're called to assist with different things, is 5%, and then wires down is only 3% during a couple of windstorms we had. Public service a lot was during the flooding. We were assisting with the flooding, so that's brought that up considerably. As far as calls, the percent of incidents per area, the village of Pemberton is 39%, Lillooet is 34%, regional district, or our fire district, which includes the Meadows, the Fringe, and the Heights, is 9%, and the regional district, which is outside for motor vehicle accidents only, is 18%. Our training and commitment, our memberships currently stands at 34 members, volunteers paid on call, and 2 full-time, so we have a total of 36. We did our training commitment for the second quarter because we didn't change anything till July for training. We had 26 training sessions for the second quarter with 69 hours of that training. Special training, which we did a lot of first responder training, with 16 different training sessions for 83 hours. We did no public events. We had a number of meetings with RCMP, ambulance, and internal meetings. And then incidences was 95 incidences for a total of 108 hours. We did 5 business inspections for the second quarter, which was new applicants coming in, wanting business licenses. And then in June, starting in June, we received our FireSmart funding for a FireSmart coordinator and laborer, and they started in July. And that is my second quarter report.
Thank you, Chief Grossman. Questions? No questions. All right, well, I guess you covered all the information thoroughly. Motion to receive, please. Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for the report, Chief Grossman, and thanks to all the crew for the assistance in the potential flooding we were looking at. I know everybody answered the call really well, and we appreciate that. So please
Thank
pass
you.
it on.
Can I make one more comment?
Yeah.
I'd also, like to thank the crew for attending and assisting with wildfire. I know we just had a switch out. We've just sent a second crew. Was it yesterday?
Yes,
Chief?
yes.
How many we
So-
sent? 4 again?
4 again, yeah.
For 10
So-
days?
Pardon?
Pardon?
For a 10-day period?
They usually, the OFC is asking for a 14-day. I've had a number of requests from them, like, well, all the fire chiefs have, they just keep looking for more and more people, but we feel in talking with the CAO that the 4 people with the 1 truck is sufficient enough, and it still keeps Pemberton well protected.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Great. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, we're getting there. We're on bylaws for adoption. This is on the mobile vendors bylaw number 904, so I will declare conflict on this. You're going to put me in the waiting room, Ms. Kennedy? Is that how we're going to do it?
Yes, that's what we'll do.
Yep, and I'll turn the chair over to Councillor Zant.
So I guess from here, we're looking for a motion to adopt the Village of Pemberton Business Bylaw number 855, 2019 mobile food vendors, bylaw number 904, 2021 to be adopted. Does anybody want to make that motion? Councilor Noble, second. Nobody wants to second the motion. Councilor Antonelli.
I just had a comment. I don't really want to second the motion.
Okay, go ahead.
In our discussion, we had a lot of talk about how many we would be permitting, because there's 4 spots available. And we talked about permitting 2, then 5, then 4, and we landed on 4, I believe it was. But I said initially suggested 2, and I think that's the one I'd be more comfortable with to try to, because for one thing, I don't think those 4 spots would support 4 full-time businesses trying to make a living. I think 2 would probably do it. So that's the number that I think I would feel more comfortable with. I don't know if anyone else has some comments or thoughts on that.
Councilor Craddock.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will not be supporting this bylaw. A couple of things. I think the idea is good. I think going from 5 to 9 is not a reasonable number. At the same time, I don't think we've reached out to the Chamber of Commerce or solicited input from local businesses. I've heard from some that say that with COVID just ending and they've only got a couple of months here to try and pick up on the tourism season, having a bunch more vehicles in the community is going to affect them big time. I really don't know that doing it this year is really a move that obviously I cannot support. I would prefer that we see that we defer this bylaw till next year and give us a chance to talk to business owners in the chamber to see how it might affect the businesses. I know in most communities, when you add food trucks, businesses that are in this, and I'm talking bricks and mortar, a lot of times they can give you an idea how many people they turn away each day, which gives you an idea how badly you may want to provide these food trucks. So I think not unlike the line that Councilor Antonelli is following, moving from 5 to 9 is a huge increase, and it wasn't, I don't believe, what we originally had thought we were going to go to. So I will be opposing this motion.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor Craddock. Councillor Noble?
I would support deferring it to next season because we are partway through the summer, it's short notice. And as Councillor Craddock said, we could get more feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Ms. Gilmore?
I have a question and comment. Maybe I'll go a comment first. This is a pilot project, so it's actually not in perpetuity. And I think that's one of the reasons we suggested that we bring it forward so we could understand if there are any impacts or were any impacts to businesses without setting in stone that it was going to be guaranteed forever. My next comment is we've already issued some permits, and I would be curious to know how that impacts the current permits that we've already allowed. And Ms. Fraser, I don't know if you can comment on that.
Well, there is the concern that we are limiting the number of food trucks, which would mean that the one food truck that does have the permit has an advantage over all other potential businesses. So we would have to, in essence, shut the program down, and we would have one food truck that would have priority or exclusivity over the program for this year. And potentially next year. So I guess we would be looking for council's direction with respect to how you want to proceed, or if you even do want to proceed with a food truck program, because at this point we have one food truck that would have priority or have exclusivity on.
Councillor Craddock?
Yeah, I guess what I'd like to know is we have 5 permits available at the present time. Are all 5 used up then? Is that what you're saying?
At this point, we have 5 under the existing bylaw. We have 5 mobile vendor business licenses. With the food truck that is currently who's been issued, that's all 5 of our mobile licenses have been allocated. So if anybody else came in and expressed an interest in participating in the food truck pilot project, we would have to say, I'm sorry, no, you can't, because we don't have any more mobile business licenses to issue. And that's why we asked for this exemption for the purposes of the pilot project, was because we do know that there are a couple of other people who are interested in potentially participating. They are looking at getting equipment and purchasing a food truck. But if they already know that even if they got this up and going in the next few weeks, or even look to do it next year, they wouldn't be able to get a business license. They won't pursue the project. And to Councillor Craddock's just comments with respect to referring out, the pilot project was sent out to the chamber and the collaborative, and advertised throughout the community to make sure that people had the opportunity to participate, or if there was interest in that. So, and we never received any feedback or negative or otherwise from bricks and mortar businesses. So just a couple of things that I think council may want to consider. We don't know how we would pursue this or continue this program if we didn't have a couple 4 more business licenses to offer. And keep in mind that these food truck opportunities are specific to specific locations, and they identify their days. It's not like it's just a free for all with, 3 or 4 food trucks in every location, 7 days a week. The food truck operator has to look at what's going to work for them, and pick times and dates that will work for them, and that they would obviously be, their services would be utilized.
Councillor Antonelli?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to my comments. I think adding a new food truck this year is likely off the table for any businesses, because we're partway through the season anyhow. So whatever we're approving now is likely for next year anyhow. I also think that food food trucks are different than restaurants. They're, you know, sort of a cultural thing going for street food. I think it's important for Pemberton to have a little bit of both. And I think that it's not the role of council to reduce competition. You know, I agree we shouldn't open it up wide so we have tons of food trucks coming from other communities or anything like that. But I think adding just a little bit more for what would be next year, 1 or 2 at these select locations. I do see that as something that we could explore as part of this pilot program. You know, I'm thinking of, you know, selling hot dogs at the rec site during a soccer tournament. I think that's acceptable. So I'm still interested in exploring this in a small way, noting that it will likely be next year that if any additional businesses come on board.
Councillor Craddock?
Yeah, thank you very much, Acting Mayor. I'm wondering through to Ms. Fraser, do we have any current applicants on file?
We have one person who has indicated that they may be making application, but we haven't received it yet at this point. So, I mean, at this point, 5 business licenses have been allocated for this year. If somebody came on and decided they wanted to move for August and September, we would have to say no if this bylaw is not passed. And it could be something that they could look at for next year if they get in and they get their permit.
Okay, I guess actually in effect, because we haven't passed the bylaw, there's actually no licenses that have been allocated at this point. Is that
We have 1 license that's been allocated because it was the 5th one in for the year, but it would effectively close the program for this year.
Yeah, that's correct. I'm sorry, I'll rephrase that. With this new program we're looking at, there's been no applications on the potential extra 4 at this point.
Not at this point, because we don't have, the bylaws just going through the process. So we do know that there is somebody who would be interested, but at this point, if this bylaw does not pass, they probably won't pursue it and may not pursue it at all.
Thank you.
So I guess at this point, we're at the point of calling the question to adopt this bylaw. Ms. Fraser, is that
We
correct?
don't have a second yet.
You don't have a seconder?
Don't have a second, okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Craddock, a second?
No, seeing how we don't have a seconder to the motion and that motion would die, I would move that we defer this program till next year, which will give us a little more opportunity to put it together.
And that's your motion on the table?
Correct.
And a seconder?
So
Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Fraser.
if we're deferring the program, then the 1 license that we have issued, if the program is deferred, the program's no longer in place. So I just need to get some clarity, because if you're deferring the program,
Bylaw
or
the
you're deferring the bylaw or the program. Because if you're deferring the program, then we would have to rescind the license from the current food truck that is in place, because the program would be closed.
You just told us, though, that it was within the first 5 licenses. I asked you if any of these new ones had been, and you said no. So why would it affect
So
that one?
I think the problem I think Councillor Craddock, what you're saying is you're not wanting to add any new licenses available for this year.
That's correct. Thank you
Correct.
very
So
much.
you would like to
Yes.
defer the bylaw. Or,
Defer the bylaw.
yeah, defer the bylaw.
If that's, yes, I appreciate you figuring me out.
Okay.
I'd like to defer the bylaw till next year, and if we have to put a date on it for a March meeting.
Well, we would, if we're going to, we should probably rescind for 2nd and 3rd reading, and then direct staff to bring it back. My suggestion would be that if we are going to continue with the pilot project, what we would do is be advertising in November, December, because people need time to get organized. So we would know, and we would probably put a date of February for them to submit their applications, and then we would know how many business licenses we would potentially need. Leaving it to March might be a little bit late, just in terms of their planning.
So
But
could
yeah,
you, Could you give me the wording you'd like for us to,
That Village of
on?
Pemberton Business License Bylaw 855 Amendment Bylaw 904. That first, second, and third reading of Business License Amendment Bylaw 904 be rescinded.
thank you very much, and I'll make that motion.
Is there a seconder to that motion? I'll second that motion. Councillor Antonelli, is that a second?
No, I just wanted to say I support that because, we're looking at, what businesses we can support for next year. But I do think that to outfit a food truck, you need a long lead time. So I wouldn't put it off to March. I would put it like January 1st, let people start thinking about this.
Well,
Yeah,
we
I
would,
agree.
yeah.
I agree with that, and I think Ms. Fraser was correct in saying advertising it in November and getting stuff going earlier. So I think staff will do a great job bringing it forward.
Okay, yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Noble?
Will we be reaching out to the applicant to let them know that will be happening next year instead?
We'll have to let anyone who's expressed an interest know that there's no business licenses for this year and that the program is closed. Yeah.
So, Mr. Rizzi, can I call the question now?
Yeah.
Call the question, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
Gwendolyn, are you able to bring the mayor back in?
He's probably eating lunch. I think Mayor Zant's doing fine.
Yeah, he is eating lunch. Let's carry on.
Yeah, you're the acting mayor, keep going.
All right. Bylaw 10-2. Oh, there he is. Just in time. You're on mute.
Sorry to disappoint, I'm back. Okay. Why is my screen change? Okay, so we're on to 10A2, which is the Village of Pemberton fees and charges bylaw number 905, which is up for adoption. Any comments on this? Councillor Caddick, go ahead.
Move adoption.
Second, Councillor Zant, further discussion? I have just a quick note, and I feel sheepish just saying this now at this point in the process, but maybe it's just something that we can keep an eye on down the road. And it's regarding the rental fees for commercial enterprises, especially around the barn. Now, we haven't seen a lot of it, especially with COVID recently, so I don't think it's a big issue now. I know we have a couple events coming up. I just want to make sure if the barn starts to be used as a commercial capacity in any way beyond the community capacity that it's normally used, that we are really charging competitive prices for that and appropriate prices for that. I think it's $1,000 for commercial events in there right now. If you were to go out and get a wedding venue, it's minimum $5,000 somewhere. So it's just something, I don't think it's something we need to discuss right now. And again, I apologize for not bringing it early in the process. It was just a thought as I was reading it last night again. And yeah, like I say, other venues are really expensive. If we are going to use the barn at all in that capacity, I think the community should benefit by having an appropriate fee on it. So that's just my thought. Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 11, Mayor's Report. Actually fairly late today. Couple quick meetings I want to catch you up on. I was on a meeting early last week, minister's meeting, and it was also attended by the Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Preparedness, Jennifer Rice, as well as members of EMBC and BC Wildfire. And it was about the local state of emergency and the wildfire season we're having across the province. an update on those fires, an update on resources being deployed, on provincial support, etc. You know, the conversation understandably was sort of dominated by the mayors from more affected fire regions right now. But there was some really good conversation as well around, you know, and questions to the ministers and parliamentary secretary about potentially closing the backcountry to ATVs. There was a few questions around that, which I found interesting, to which the response was, you know, having some traffic in the backcountry is good because it's eyes on the backcountry, and they actually put out fires that, or at least see fires that might have gotten away. So there was conversation about finding that balance between keeping the backcountry open as opposed to shutting it down entirely. You know, lots of discussion about the forecast, the support nationally and internationally. The Army is being sent in as well to support the BC evacuation strategies. And there was a lot of discussion about future fire smarting and what that looks like, considering that these fire seasons are getting harder and longer. You know, we all know about the fire smarting activities that we have going on, but what can the province and the federal government provide to communities for much more enhanced fire smarting to protect our communities and make sure that the wildfires don't get too close to our homes. Another conversation, I had a meeting with myself and the Mayor of Whistler with the North Shore Restorative Justice Society. And they gave us a quick presentation on the work they do. Is really interesting. You know, the short of it is the idea behind restorative justice rather than criminal justice is a few layers. I mean, first of all, it's to sort of catch folks, especially youth, I would say, but people in general, early on in conflict, before that becomes a pattern of behavior. And it focuses on both the perpetrator and the victim, and in terms of their needs and understanding where that conflict comes from. And it's a much more preventative based crime response. Again, it's more victim focused rather than punishment focused. It's a really interesting process. Basically, the referrals pretty much completely come from the police. The police will refer to the Restorative Justice Society cases, and to make these referrals and for them to take on the files, there needs to be the perpetrator needs to take on full accountability. There needs to be consent and participation from both the victim and the perpetrator. You know, one of the benefits is that there is no criminal record. Again, it's about education and support of both victim and offender. The results are very positive from what they listed. You know, there's a real drop in repeat offenders of folks that go through restorative justice rather than criminal justice. The police find themselves to be part of the solution as opposed to just enforcement. The victim needs are kept central. It's cheaper than criminal justice, vastly cheaper than criminal justice. You know, it's a really great way, again, from keeping folks from getting into a pattern of mischief. And most of the files that are forwarded are mischief and assault related, but pretty much any file can be referred to by the police. And so the North Shore Restorative Justice Society has been doing work in that area for a while. They started doing just recently a pilot project in Squamish. And the reason Mayor Crompton and I were on the call with them, it was to see if there could be a regional consideration. So they were looking at expanding during the pilot project in Squamish, expanding up to Whistler and potentially Pemberton. I explained how a town our size does and doesn't pay into the RCMP budget and how we can affect that. You know, I said from my side, not speaking for council, I'm very interested in restorative justice and how it could help our community. You know, we've seen tensions with the police and youth and others recently that I feel would be a good fit. So, but obviously budget and how it would be funded is an issue. So I asked more about the funding, what it looks like. They offered to provide more details, which I'm waiting for. And I suggested, and Mayor Crompton was very supportive of, and they were keen to hear, a more regional or a more corridor approach to this. Again, explaining our different sort of realities for police budgets. And so they're doing this pilot project in Squamish. Mayor Crompton and I suggested having a look at that corridor approach, and they're going to run that through their table and have a conversation and see if that's something that we could bring up here. But a really great program. I met our MLA or our MP rather here a few days ago, last week I guess it was. He came up to meet me and do a little tour. Nothing much new there. It's in our letters here, but I just wanted to reinforce that the National Disaster Mitigation Fund is reopened, coming through the feds. And I mentioned this months ago. They've reduced the minimum project size from something like 20 million down to 1 or 2 million. So I think it's something we definitely need to be on top of and flag with the PVMC and our partners to see if maybe there are some funds available for some of the work like the Miller Dike that we've been working towards, and a lot of the projects that were identified through the NHA report. So yeah, that could be good news. They are, unlike the funds that we've been chasing down through the province, they are for straight up one-time only infrastructure and emergency mitigation projects. He feels like it's a good fit when I describe some of our project, he meaning our MP. So Ms. Gilmore, let's stay on top of that and pass it on to our partners. Go ahead.
Staff are already reviewing this. I think the one thing that we need to take into consideration, again, that change in asset ownership, depending on who's eligible to apply and who does, that's going to realistically be the biggest challenge for us moving forward.
Yeah, I flagged that with him, but he didn't have anything for me.
Right.
Yeah, and then just went through some of our other grant applications that are in, and did a little tour of Pemberton and showed some of our priorities to the MP. So it was a good meeting. A couple very quick notes. We had, I believe, and I could have this number totally wrong, I think at least 8 participants from Pemberton in the Canada National Mountain Bike Nationals just this past weekend. So I just want to give a shout out to our young athletes. We were really, really well represented at the Nationals. We had some really great finishes, which will be publicized. I think it was just this past weekend. And yeah, there's one kid in particular who won his category, and there was, like I say, 7 or 8 of our youth that were there. So really great participation and representation. I just wanted to give those kids a shout out. We are scheduling a transit committee meeting. So we're going to, the corridor transit committee will be reconvening shortly. And the last item I just wanted to mention was, this is our last meeting. We don't have any meetings in August as we take a council break. And it's certainly not a shutdown of our services and our offices, but it is a bit of an opportunity for staff to either A, catch up because we're not throwing more stuff at them, but even more, hopefully, I'm hopeful in this case that it'll give staff a chance to regroup and recover and regenerate and take some very, very well-deserved, much-needed time off. It's only a month, but I know staff and management is sort of staggering their time off and everybody's trying to grab a little piece of it. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say to council, enjoy the break, but I especially wanted to point out to staff that we recognize here at council that it's been a long 1.5 years, pandemic and otherwise, and it hasn't stopped since. And it's become normal to be under these conditions. And I think as a result, I know for myself, I've stopped acknowledging the hard work that's gone into the last few months in managing the pandemic and supporting our community. So there's a chance for a small break. And I just want to say thank you to all the management and all the staff for all the work over the last 18 months. And please enjoy some time off. Please turn your phones off when you're not at work. And I wish all of you and council included a nice little break. And I hope you all get to join some family and loved ones and enjoy a little time off. That is my report. Anything from council? Councillor Craddock.
Thanks very much. And it's, excuse me, not really a report, but a big thank you to Nikki, Sheena, Gwendolyn, and Tom. It seems technology did catch up to me, and I'm sitting here in council chambers with a raft of paper as I got my accounts all hacked last week, and so my computers are all down, and each one of those people went over and above to give me a hand getting set up so I could even attend the meeting today. So thank you to each and one of you. It's nice to know that staff is there to support council when I typically fall apart with technology. The only other thing I have is a couple of issues that come up, excuse me, regarding landscaping and a couple of houses across from Rona. I know we don't have bylaw right now, but I'm wondering if a letter or note to the owners could clean that up. It looks really terrible on the downtown street. And now that Hydro has cleaned up their site, I know when they're referenced it, they will do something. So that's it again to everybody. Enjoy a little bit of vacation. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we're in the home stretch. Correspondence for action. This is about a letter from Mayor Elliott from Squamish, extending an invitation to the village to join the BCSPI, which is a social procurement initiative. Something I've met with the Mayor of Squamish on a number of occasions, and I think has some really good potential outcomes. It talks about how to, the social procurement initiative is about how we can hire locally. It's about how we can hire with a strong social conscience, how we can build the network of social procurement up and down the corridor and right down to the city. So I'm open to comments on this. If people would like to provide a comment, my thought is that we could refer back to staff to see how it could perhaps be brought back for future discussion. I think would be the way to go at this point. Councillor Zant, go ahead.
I just throughout the report, I didn't see if there was a cost behind being a member to this group.
At this point, it's more staff time would be the biggest implication. And even then, I think we were at the early stages of it. So I think those are the sorts of questions that if we wanted to maybe have staff have a look at this and bring back a short report in terms of our capacity to do more with this initiative and potential costs and all those sorts of implications. So I think that's a totally fair question, but we're not there yet. So, go ahead, Councillor Noble.
I'd like to make the motion to have staff look into it and bring it back to us.
Seconder?
I second that.
Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have 10 items, 10 correspondence for information. I would like to pull out number 8 and number 10. Would anybody else like to pull anything out?
Move to
Go ahead,
receive.
Councillor
and file
Antonelli.
arrest.
I wanted to pull out the one about the Winterfest. Which number was that?
Yeah, that's 8. I got that one.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll get a motion to receive 1 through 7 and 9.
Motion.
Zant, second by Councillor Noble. Any opposed? Motion carries. So number 8 is the letter from Carly Cindric regarding the discontinuation of the annual Winterfest event. Go ahead, Councillor Antonelli, you go first.
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit tricky with the shifting weather and that kind of thing. So I understand why they might want to cancel it and move on to other areas of focus. But I do want to send a letter to them from council, just expressing appreciation and their enthusiasm and the work. I think that is what makes community. And yeah, so I'd like to have that letter sent out.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to bring up. Thank you very much, Councillor Antonelli. Moved by Councillor Antonelli, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then number 10 is about some of the complaints we received, or a letter from Rocky Mountaineer regarding some of the complaints registered over idling overnight. And there was a lot. I received a lot of emails and calls on this, as did staff, and I'm sure some of you. Rocky Mountaineer was fairly quick to respond, as we see from this letter. The reason I wanted to bring it up, it was two things. Number one, I want to make sure that the public knows that we've had this conversation, because again, a number of us have been contacted. So perhaps, I don't know, CEO Gilmore, if we want to put this correspondence from them out on our e-news, or if you've done an abbreviated version of it or something like that, but I just want to make sure the public knows. And my second thing on it is they're talking about coming in and turning off one generator. Is there the ability, is that second generator anything close? Is that half the noise we heard? Because even if it's half the noise that was there, it's still unacceptable to have that running for 16 hours. Because it started, I was there, it started at 10 o'clock at night, close to that, if not earlier. And it was still going mid-afternoon, early afternoon the next day. So if it's one generator, does it create a similar amount of noise? And is there another ability to plug in or other solution? Go ahead, Ms. Gilmore.
So for what happened, the situation that happened, they immediately actioned it and just went down to the one generator to keep the food ongoing. Our approach and our discussions with them would be to come up with a completely alternative system so that there are no generators, or to find an alternative location where the noise isn't an impact to anyone. So we would not accept any noise. We would be working with them to either have an alternative source of power or to park somewhere else and where there are no impacts to the residents.
Okay, I'm glad, because from what I read in that letter, and that's why I pulled it out, it felt to me that they were saying, oh, thank you, we received the complaints. We will be going down to one generator on August 8th. I'm hoping that's you. As long as staff is working with them to find another solution, then that's great.
Yeah.
Councillor Noble, go ahead.
That was just my question, was whether there was a shoreline option for them instead of generators.
Because they used to plug in, didn't they?
I think so.
They've done it in the past, but they weren't at the current location either.
Right. Okay. Well, as long as staff is taking that angle, because again, one generator seems like one too many as well. Yep. Okay, so maybe with that in mind, a motion to have staff work with the Rocky Mountaineers staff to ensure that there are no further noise disturbances, just so it's on the books. Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. No late business. Notice of motion. And we're on a 17 question period. Ms. Kennedy.
There are no questions.
Come on, no one. All right. That's great. Then let's. I'm going to recess the regular meeting, and I will look for a motion to go on camera. Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. It's 12:45. Why don't we take 15 minutes and come back at 1 o'clock for in camera on this link.
Okay, we are good to go.
So we're on 14, rise with the report, or 19, sorry, which we don't have anything. And so motion to adjourn the regular council meeting. Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Have a great month off if that's what you've got, everybody. Enjoy the summer. Enjoy what you got. Enjoy vacations if that's what you've got. And
thanks.
We'll see you in a while.
Happy summer.
Have a good summer, guys.
Have a good time, guys.
Too.
Happy summer.